Chapter 521. Herb Field. Back then, with a soul depth of 12.1, Xianxia was able to persuade the other party easily. Now that his soul depth had reached 14.1 and he had undergone a second celestial master teacher acknowledgement, it was no longer an issue for him to do so much. Even so, Song Chao actually didn't make a loss. A grade 7 metal coffin was an artifact that a 4-star blacksmith specially crafted for housing a soulless metal humanoid. It probably was even more expensive than this when Mo Hunsheng bought it back then. Depressed, Song Chao was just about to look for Xianxia to take back his spirit stone when the room suddenly hushed. A slight air of vitality wafted in the hall. Garden owner Shui arrives. Along with the declaration, an elder who looked like she was in her 50s walked into the room. Even though her skin was a little loose and there were signs of age all around her, one could still see hints of a previous beauty in her. She didn't reveal her cultivation, but vaguely, one could feel a powerful aura from her that seemed to nearly match up to the demon-sank beast. It was no wonder why Alliance head Zhao was slightly apprehensive of the other party's strength. From the looks of it, his worry was not unfounded. I thank everyone here for attending today's banquet. Walking into the hall, Garden owner Shui addressed with a smile. Garden owner Shui, you're being much too polite. How could I dare miss out on a banquet hosted by Garden owner Shui? We haven't met one another for such a long time anyway. This banquet serves as a platform for us to catch up. The crowd smiled. Even though this herb garden wasn't open to the public, everyone knew about the formidable variety and quality of herbs within this garden. Without a doubt, among the 8 great herb gardens, this one ranked at the very top. The same went for garden owner Shui's cultivation as well. Even though those were just pleasantries, it also reflected their true thoughts. I apologize for calling all of you over so abruptly. Even though I've used the front of a banquet to gather all of you here today, I believe most of you have already guessed my true intentions. Even if I don't say anything, everyone here should know the importance of an earth vein spirit vein to a herb garden. The abrupt changes of the herb garden have caught me off guard, and due to my limited ability, I am unable to find a solution to the problem for the time being. Thus, I gathered everyone here together in hope of borrowing everyone's knowledge to tide me through this crisis. As long as anyone can come up with a solution to the problem, I, Shui Yao, hereby swear that they shall be an eternal friend of mine. No matter what medicinal herbs they require in the future, my herb garden shall supply it to them for free. Supply medicinal herbs, for free. Isn't this gift a little, no, way too generous? Garden owner Shui's medicinal herbs have never been put up for sale before, and as such, there are quite a lot of herbs with a maturity of a century or higher. That's not important. More importantly, if you were to become garden owner Shui's friend, given her strength and identity, who would dare trifle with you? That's true. A huge commotion immediately broke out below. Everyone's eyes went red in agitation. Even Lu Zhon's breathing hastened, and his eyes went red in agitation. Even though the Lu clan was noted as one of the 4 great clans of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, it ranked at the very bottom of the 4. It was at risk of being pulled down by the competitors below them. If they could pull garden owner Shui to their side, it would just be a matter of time before they climbed to the very top. Suppressing his excitement, he glanced at the young man he had just met, and his admiration for the latter immediately deepened. Everyone's faces were reddened in excitement, and many elders in the room even had veins popping at their temples. Yet, this young man was able to retain his composure despite the massive benefits involved. Perplexed, Lu Zhon asked, "Brother Zhong, aren't you excited?" "What is there to be excited about?" Zhong Xian asked in confusion. "Being garden owner Shui's friend." Halfway through his words, Lu Zhon suddenly smiled bitterly. The person before him was a figure who could even command respect from a 4-star master teacher and have the latter identify himself as a rookie. Shui Yao might be a formidable figure in the Myriad Kingdom city, but she might still be insufficient to catch the eye of the latter. Interrupting everyone's excitement, garden owner Shui said, "I've already said all that should be said. Those who are interested should follow me to the herb field. We can discuss the solution to the matter after you all see the condition of the earth vein spirit vine for yourself." "All right, we'll be troubling garden owner Shui to lead the way then. Let's see who can solve the problem." Everyone replied as they followed garden owner Xue out. The herb field in the herb garden was a top-notch field nourished by the earth vein spirit vine. All medicinal herbs that grew here were much more potent and larger than those growing anywhere else. Xianxia followed behind the crowd. Even before seeing the earth vein spirit vine, Xianxia could already feel the spiritual energy in the air growing more and more concentrated. Vitality seemed to flow in the air itself. Here, not only were medicinal herbs nourished, even cultivators would feel revitalized. Activating the eye of insight, Xianxia scanned the surroundings and he couldn't help but frown. Even though the herb field seemed to be filled with vitality, vaguely, a heavy aura of death seemed to linger in the area. It was a cold and sinister sensation. If one didn't pay careful attention, it would be easy to overlook it. It seems like something has indeed gone wrong with this earth vein spirit vine. Upon seeing this, Xianxia suddenly understood why garden owner Xue would gather so many herbologists here and offer such a huge reward. From the looks of it, the problem surrounding the earth vein spirit vine was much greater than expected. Before even reaching the herb field, Xianxia could already sense an aura of death. Wouldn't it be even more apparent when he stands before it? Judging from the concentration of the aura of death, if the earth vein spirit vine wasn't treated, it probably wouldn't last past a year. So many medicinal herbs. Incredible. Our clan seems nothing in comparison to this. It is no wonder why everyone says that garden owner Xue's herb garden is the best across the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. I was harboring some doubts beforehand, but after seeing this, I have no choice but to admit it. Garden owner Xue hasn't sold any medicinal herbs for more than 50 years now. The herbs she has in her storage must be incredible. Amidst shocked exclaims, the crowd arrived at the herb field. The herb field was several hundred mu large, and it was impossible to see the end with a single glance. All kinds of medicinal herbs were planted in the area, and every single one of them was exuding concentrated spiritual energy. Walking through this area, everyone felt an indescribable feeling of comfort. This is the spirit earth grass. Reticent flower. Wild gold-silver grass. These are all extremely expensive herbs, and on top of that, there is an extremely limited supply of them outside. For there to be so many of them in here. Lu Zhon was so shocked that his mouth could hardly close properly. The variety of medicinal herbs here was incredible. Many rare herbs that could rarely be seen outside filled the fields, and they came in different shapes and sizes, creating a very unique aesthetics to the area. Everyone, this is the centerpiece to my herb garden, the earth vein spirit vine. Walking along a narrow pathway in between the herb field, garden owner Xue pointed forward. Following his finger, everyone saw a massive vine rising up in the center of the herb field. Its trunk was 7 to 8 meters thick, and branches filled with lush leaves extended from it. It was the first time that most of the people here were seeing such a massive vine, and they couldn't help but be astounded by its hulking size. Even so, they swiftly noticed that something was amiss. The leaves on the thick vine were slightly yellowish, and they looked as though they were about to wither to death at any moment. This vine seems to be on the verge of death. How did this happen? How could such a huge vine wither? That's weird. Everyone here was a herbologist who had a deep understanding of medicinal herbs. They couldn't help but be astounded upon seeing such a massive vein being on the verge of death. You aren't mistaken. This earth vein spirit vine is indeed on the verge of death. I've tried many ways to save it, but my efforts were futile. Left with no choice, I could only invite everyone else here to brainstorm for a better idea. Garden owner Xue's eyes darkened. Earth vein spirit vines were the foundation to a herb garden, and if it dies, it won't be long before all of the medicinal herbs wither. By then, the entire herb field would be ruined. An elder took a look and remarked, since even garden owner Xue is helpless before the issue surrounding the earth vein spirit vine, we probably won't be able to come up with anything good either. His words received the approval of others as well. Judging by how garden owner Xue was able to cultivate so many superior medicinal herbs, her proficiency in the occupation was definitely extremely high. If even she was helpless before this issue, how could the rest of them possibly solve the problem? Seeing that the morale was low, an elder spoke up, "You all shouldn't feel discouraged by it. If we put our heads together, we just might be able to find a solution to the problem. After all, this is the main reason why garden owner Xue invited us here today. Elder Lu is right. In the end, the strength of an individual is limited. If we work together, we just might be able to solve the problem. We have all dealt with medicinal herbs our entire life, so surely, we would have some secret techniques or nifty tricks of our own. Maybe if we try them all, we just might be able to save the earth vein spirit vine. As long as it's concerning medicinal herbs, we'll surely be able to find a way out. Hearing the words of the elder, everyone recovered from their low morale. The reward that garden owner Xue offered this time was too great. No one wanted to give up on such a good opportunity. They had no idea whether their solution would work or not, but what if it worked? That's my grandfather, the current head of the Lu clan. Seeing how everyone's morale lit up once more just because of a single word from Elder Lu, Lu Zhon immediately turned to Xianxia and explained it to him. UN. Xianxia nodded silently. His eyes were fixated on the vine before him. The vine was massive, and the length exposed outside already stretched for a height of several hundred meters high. It was unimaginable how deep the vine underground extended. For such a bizarre plant to exist as well, nature was truly filled with wonders. Xianxia examined the leaves of the vine carefully with the eye of insight. That's not right. After taking a look, Xianxia frowned. The eye of insight should be capable of determining the current growth stage of the huge fellow and analyze it based on that. Even though it was inferior to the Library of Heaven's Path, it was more than sufficient to solve most problems. Logically speaking, given how the leaves of the tree were yellow and it was on the verge of death, the tree must either be ill, infested with worms, or coming to the end of its lifespan. But the eye of insight showed that wasn't the case. In other words, this earth vein spirit vine was perfectly healthy, but yet, it was plagued with an aura of death. From the looks of it, it wouldn't live past a few more days. It was as if a fit and healthy man was suddenly too weak to stand up. The situation was truly baffling. It was no wonder why garden owner Xue, despite banning entry to visitors and rejecting sales of medicinal herbs to even the Alliance head residents, suddenly gathered all of them here today and made such a generous offer. She must truly have been forced into a corner. While Xianxia was assessing the earth vein spirit vine, the others weren't lazing around either. After assessing the vine, Elder Lu suddenly spoke up. Hall Master Xue, you should have a deeper knowledge regarding the details of this earth vein spirit vine. May I know when the illness struck, what kind of symptoms there are, and what methods you've used to treat it so that we can all analyze the information? With just a single look, it was clear that the massive earth vein spirit vine was ill, and treating a medicinal herb, just like treating a human, required one to understand more about its condition. Only by learning about the cause and symptoms of the illness could one make deductions and decide on the most feasible treatment method. Chapter 522. Completely helpless indeed, garden owner Xue, you should tell us about it. Otherwise, we'll just be grasping at straws. If we don't know about the situation, we won't be able to do anything about the earth vein spirit vine's condition. Why don't you tell us about it in greater detail so that we can find a better solution together? Elder Lu's words immediately had everyone nodding their heads. For garden owner Xue's reward, they decided to give it their best shot. All right then, I'll talk about the condition of the earth vein spirit vine. Knowing that only after she revealed everything would everyone be able to come up with better solutions, garden owner Xue didn't reject the request. The earth vein spirit vine has always been healthy. Back when it wasn't ill, the vine was completely green, and its leaves were exceptionally lush. It exuded a deep aura of vitality that revitalizes all that approaches it. It was around half a year ago that everything changed. Half a year ago, a maid whom I tasked with looking after the herb field reported to me that a slight yellowish shade appeared on the spirit vein. Back then, I didn't believe her words, so I immediately rushed over to take a look. To my astonishment, that was indeed the case. Even so, as most herbologists should know, the color of the leaves changes with the seasons, and thus I didn't pay much heed to it. But 10 days later, the yellowish shade began to spread. From just a few leaves, it expanded to over half of the tree. By then, I finally realized that something was amiss and immediately tried to treat it. Since the leaves had turned yellow, I immediately turned my suspicions to the water source. After all, the cause of such conditions is frequently due to the water. So, I specially fetched the ice water from Qianhan Mountain and watered the vein with it. I thought that the issue with the yellow leaves would alleviate as time passed. But who could have known that a month later, the leaves of the entire spirit vein turned yellow instead, and even the veins within even had started to wither. Thus, I panicked. I immediately turned my attention to the soil, and after paying a heavy price, I changed the entire field of soil which the vine is absorbing nutrients from. However, there still wasn't any effect whatsoever. Thus, I found myself completely stumped. That's why I invited everyone over to help me on this matter. As she spoke, garden owner Shui shook her head in despair. Yellow leaves and withering veins. Under normal circumstances, it should be a matter of malnourishment or overnutrition. Has garden owner Shui tried tackling these issues yet? Elder Liu asked. I've given it a try already, but it's futile. Garden owner Shui shook her head. Let me give it a try. After hearing the explanation, an elder stepped forward from the crowd. It's Elder Liu. Which Elder Liu? Who else in the Myriad Kingdom City dares to call himself Elder Liu? Of course, it's garden owner Liu of the herb garden in the north of the city. He's here too. The Northern Herb Garden is the second largest herb garden in Myriad Kingdom City. If even he fails, I doubt that there is anything else we can do. A commotion immediately broke out when everyone saw the elder who volunteered to give it a try. This fellow is very famous. Zhong Xian glanced at Lu Zhon doubtfully. Cough cough. Lu Zhon choked on his own saliva. Brother Zhong, this elder Liu was already a famous figure in Myriad Kingdom City 100 years ago. He once served as the Alliance Head Residence's imperial herbologist. In the past, my grandfather often consulted him on many affairs. In terms of qualifications, he is definitely the most senior herbologist in the entire Myriad Kingdom City. It can't be that you've never ever heard of his name. Lu Zhon felt as though he was going mad. Regardless of whether Zhong Xian was from the Myriad Kingdom City or not, how could he not know Elder Liu? One must know that Elder Liu's fame transcended beyond just herbology. Even when just considering his strength, he was still one of the top figures in Myriad Kingdom City. Oh. Zhong Xian nodded his head. Only a no. Lu Zhon nearly spurted blood. That is Elder Liu. Even Pavilion Master Kang of the Master Teacher Pavilion would speak of him with utmost respect. And yet, you simply reacted nonchalantly with an "oh." What the heck do you mean by that? It is as if you had just heard of someone insignificant noticing the other party's intent gaze. Zhong Xian asked, "What's wrong?" "Nothing." Seeing the other party's innocent look, Lu Zhon felt the world spinning around him. Only then did he realize that the young man wasn't feigning it. He was truly unaware of Elder Liu's standing and identity. Suppressing his helplessness, he internally decided that he would hold a remedial lesson for Brother Zhong to brush up his knowledge of herbs. However, at that moment, the other party said a few words which left him frenzied once more. That old fellow's skill is lacking. He won't be able to cure the earth vein spirit vine. Turning his head, he saw the young man shaking his head in disappointment as he looked at Elder Liu. Shaking your head? Disappointed? Lu Zhon felt as though all of his blood was gushing into his chest, and the final thread of sanity that had been keeping him grounded snapped. What the heck are you disappointed about? You might be a master teacher, but you clearly know nothing about herbology at all. Elder Liu is a great herbologist well respected by those in the field, and even if he is unable to cure the earth vein spirit vine, do you have any rights to be disappointed in him? Not to mention that tone. To be speaking of him as though he is your junior. Big brother, where did you come from? Can you not be so arrogant and haughty? While Lu Zhon was about to faint from insanity, Elder Liu had finally finished circling around the thick vine. The soil, water, air, and nutrition are all right. What is going on? Elder Liu frowned in confusion. Given his deep understanding of medicinal herbs, he was able to gauge whether the quality of soil, water, and such were fine just by looking at them. Those factors that could affect the healthy growth of the vine were all impeccable, and there was nothing to complain about them. Even so, The giant earth vein spirit vine was still dying. This bizarre situation had left him truly stumped. After contemplating for a moment, Elder Liu asked, "Garden owner Shui, could it be that this earth vein spirit vine has come to the end of its lifespan?"
Garden owner Shui shook her head. End of its lifespan? That's impossible.
Earth vein spirit vine can live more than 1,000 years, and this spirit vine has only lived for slightly more than 100 years. How could it have reached the end of its lifespan already? She had considered this possibility as well and analyzed the possibility. However, the vine was clearly pulsating with vitality, and the factors indicating that one had reached the end of its lifespan were all missing from the vine. Besides, even if its lifespan has reached its limit, it should slowly wither away from its stem. However, the leaves are turning yellow first instead of its veins. Clearly, its lifespan isn't up yet.
You're right.
Hearing the other party's analysis, Elder Liu couldn't help but shake his head. Pardon my lack of wisdom, but I am really unable to find the root of the problem.
Thank you for your effort, Elder Liu.
Seeing that Elder Liu was helpless before this matter, garden owner Shui's eyes darkened. Even so, she still replied politely, "I apologize for being of no help." Elder Liu backed down and fell into deep thought. It seemed like this problem had truly left him stumped. Even Elder Liu is unable to solve the problem. Seeing Elder Liu admit that he was helpless before the matter, Lu Zhong suddenly recalled the young man's words and he widened his eyes in shock. Did Brother Zhong happen to be right, or did he really possess the eye of discernment to gauge that Elder Liu was unable to treat the earth vein spirit vine? Wasn't he completely unknowledgeable about herbology? Since Elder Liu is unable to do it, I doubt that I can be of help as well. Still, I wish to give it a try. Elder Liu stepped forward. Walking up to the vine, he knocked on several places carefully and tore off a part of the skin to analyze. After pondering for a long moment, he eventually shook his head and backed down, just like Elder Liu. Having come into contact with medicinal herbs for so many years, they were well versed with the common illnesses of the herbs. However, they had never seen an illness like that with the earth vein spirit vine before, and naturally, they were unable to find a solution for it. After the two most qualified elders failed, a few others stepped forward to give a look and offered some advice, but all of this advice was turned down by garden owner Shui. The ideas they proposed were normal and she had already tried them already, but to no avail. 2 hours later, all of the herbologists and garden owners had already given it a try but were helpless before the situation. There were some of the younger generation who hadn't given it a try yet, but most of them were only accompanying their elders to expand their horizon. As their level of skill paled to the others, they weren't able to come up with a feasible solution either. Does anyone else have any ideas? Seeing that no one could solve the problem despite inviting so many herbologists here, garden owner Shui's disappointment deepened. I can't think of anything else already. Garden owner Shui has already tested all of the ideas I can think of. This really seems hopeless. Since even Elder Liu, and garden owner Shui are helpless before this matter, how can we come up with a better solution? It's no wonder why garden owner Shui is offering such a generous compensation. Indeed, it won't be easy to win her compensation. Hearing garden owner Shui's words, everyone shook their heads. Most people had given the earth vein spirit vine a look, but its affliction had surpassed their level of understanding. Even herbologists who had immersed themselves in the art for many years were unable to understand the situation at all, and they were stumped. All right, I've troubled everyone. A banquet is prepared at the hall, so do have some food before you leave. Seeing that no one else had any idea, garden owner Shui shook her head. Since she'd invited everyone here in the name of a banquet, naturally, she had prepared some delicious food and fine wine. I wasn't able to be of help and I feel embarrassed by my powerlessness. I think I shall pass on the banquet. I still have matter at home to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. Even though garden owner Shui was being hospitable, everyone's complexion didn't seem too well. But that was to be expected. Everyone here was a celebrity among herbologists, and yet, despite putting their heads together, they were unable to even find the cause of the illness. It was no wonder why they felt embarrassed. The illness of this earth vein spirit vine is indeed a little bizarre. It's not a big deal that you aren't able to find its affliction. After all, I'm the same as well. I hope that you all can remain and have your meal before leaving. Also, I happen to have something to ask of you all. Seeing the embarrassed expression on everyone's faces, garden owner Xue immediately understood what they were thinking and consoled them. Just as she was about to continue speaking, she suddenly froze. That Gongzi over there, what are you doing? Hearing her words, everyone immediately turned their gaze over and saw a young man standing before the thick vines. He stretched out his hand and touched it lightly, after which, he walked around the vine once and went on to touch a few more valuable medicinal herbs before coming to a stop. What is he doing? Everyone was dumbstruck. Medicinal herbs needed a unique environment to grow. In fact, there were some medicinal herbs that were exceptionally sensitive and abhor a human's touch. As such, none of the crowd approached the earth vein spirit vine to touch it. Even if they did, they were all wearing gloves. After all, depending on the cultivation technique that the person cultivated, there was a possibility that one's touch might cause some unintended reaction with a medicinal herb, resulting in an unimaginable situation. There was once a yang attribute expert who touched a yin attribute medicinal herb, and the medicinal herb withered on the spot. That was also the reason why herbologists cultivated neutral cultivation techniques. Even all of the herbologists were keeping their distance from the earth vein spirit vine for fear to exacerbating the situation, and yet, this fellow actually dared to sneak forward to touch it without any fear. What the hell? Don't you know the basic rules? Chapter 523. Are you a pig? While everyone was dumbstruck, Lu Zhon leaped in shock and nearly fainted on the spot. Others might not know that young man, but he had been talking to him just a moment ago. Why, in a moment when his attention was elsewhere, the other party began walking casually around the herb garden, touching things randomly. Even though you know nothing about herbology, you could ask me about it. Even if you don't have any questions to ask, surely you should have noticed that no one is wandering about and deduce something from it. It's one thing for you to touch the earth vein spirit vine. That thing is humongous, and it probably won't die even if you slash it with all of your might. However, those spirit medicinal herbs are a huge taboo. Anxious, Lu Zhon racked his brain to find an excuse for the other party when the latter turned around, clapped his hands, and looked at the crowd nonchalantly. Oh, I'm just trying to see if I can find a way to treat this earth vein spirit vine. Treat? Lu Zhon spurted blood. All right, I know that even a 4-star master teacher is fearful of you. However, after our previous conversation, it couldn't be more clear that you don't know a single thing about herbology. If one can find a solution just by touching a few things here and there, we, herbologists, would have lost our job long ago. If you're curious, just say it. Why must you spout such an obvious lie? Can't you see that so many people here are stumped by the issue already? What arrogant words! Who do you think you are to be spouting such haughty words here? If it's that easy to treat the earth vein spirit vine, Elder Liu, and the others would have long given suggestions. Do you think that a small brat like you has the right to butt in? Where did this fellow come from? Garden owner Chen, is he one of your men? I don't know him. As expected, upon hearing Zhong Xian's words, a huge uproar was immediately generated. So many master herbologists were unable to determine the illness at all. What can a fellow like you who hasn't even reached 20 yet possibly notice? Braggart. Garden owner Xue was also taken aback. A frown appeared on her forehead and she looked at Zhong Xian doubtfully. Did you uncover anything? I did find something, but I might require garden owner Xue's assistance on this matter, the young man said. Assistance? Feel free to speak. As long as it's within my means, I'll do it. Garden owner Xue nodded her head. Even though she shared the same sentiments as the crowd, she didn't think that this young man would be able to accomplish anything. She still wanted to give it a try. Good. The young man chuckled sheepishly and said, Can you execute a punching routine for me? Punching routine. Garden owner Xue was taken aback. The others in the area were also flabbergasted. Of all requests, they never thought that he would get garden owner Xue to execute a punching routine. Aren't we here to look at the earth vein spirit vine? What are you asking the owner to execute a punching routine for? Why does it sound like you are fooling with a monkey instead? If you execute a punching routine, I'll give you a peach.
Audacious! How dare you tease the garden owner? You're courting death. Hualala! Some of the younger herbologists immediately rushed up. Garden owner Xue was a famous figure even within the entire Myriad Kingdom city, not to mention, she was the owner of the #1 herb garden. To ask her to execute a punching routine all of a sudden. Are you trying to make fun of her? Everyone, calm down. There must be some kind of misunderstanding here. Lu Zhon hurriedly stepped forward and intervened. Brother Zhong was a person who was likely to be a 4-star master teacher. Putting everyone else aside, even his grandfather couldn't afford to offend the other party. A young man harumphed furiously. Misunderstanding? What misunderstanding can there be? What does treating the Earthvein spirit vine have to do with getting garden owner Xue to execute a punching routine? This. Lu Zhon was also baffled by that as well. Thus, he turned his sight to Zhongxian and asked, Zhongxia, what is going on? Oh, I have a rough idea of the symptom of the Earthvein spirit vine and I would like to double confirm my conjecture. It'll do as long as garden owner Xue executes a punching routine for me, Zhongxian said. After assessing the Earthvein spirit vine with the eye of insight for so long, he came to the same conclusion as the crowd. The spirit vein wasn't ill. Helpless, he chose to step forward and touch it. Through the library of Heaven's Path, he finally found out what was wrong with the Earthvein spirit vine. Thus, he continued to touch a few more medicinal herbs and he realized that they were suffering from the same affliction as well. It was after deducing something from all of this evidence that he decided to make such a request. Zhongxia. Hearing the address, everyone frowned. Yes, Brother Zhong is a master teacher. He must have his own reasons for doing all of this. Lu Zhon hurriedly said. Master teacher. Taken aback, all eyes swiftly shot to Zhongxian. Since the other party was a master teacher, in consideration of his identity, he shouldn't spout any nonsense. Also, it was perfectly normal for a master teacher to ask others to display their cultivation technique to him. Just that. They still couldn't understand what did this have to do with the illness of the Earthvein spirit vine. All right. Knowing the other party was a master teacher, even though garden owner Xue was slightly skeptical at the other party's purpose, she still chose to nod her head. Driving her Xianxia, her fist lashed out. Pai pa! A deafening sonic boom sounded as the air which was compressed by the immense might of her fist exploded. A huge gust of wind blew at the crowd, nearly sending them tumbling into the distance. Even though it was a punch infused with energy from the environment, it was no simple feat to compress air to the point of forming a sonic boom with just an ordinary punch. At the very least, most transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle experts were incapable of such. It was no wonder why the other party was so feared by Alliance head Zhao. The strength of this garden owner Xue was indeed formidable. Is this all right? After executing her fist, garden owner Xue retracted her fist and looked at Zhongxian quietly. UN. Zhongxian replied, seemingly confirmed something. Then, shaking his head, he looked at garden owner Xue with a sympathetic gaze. I know the problem your Earthvein spirit vine is suffering from. But before that, I would like to ask you. Garden owner Xue and everyone immediately turned their gazes over. They had examined the Earthvein spirit vine for so long, but they were still unable to tell what was wrong with it. On the other hand, the master teacher before them came to a conclusion just by viewing the garden owner's punching routine. Are you for real? Everyone pricked their ears in fear that they would miss out a single word that the young man would say. Following which, they heard a slightly lamenting voice sounded, Are you a pig? Pu. Garden owner Xue's body swayed and she nearly exploded. What did you say? Hong Long. Her aura suddenly surged as if a spark of flame had ignited a pot of hot oil. She was a renowned expert of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, the garden owner of the Western Herb Garden. Even a master teacher wasn't permitted to humiliate her like that. He said that garden owner Xue is a pig. Aren't master teachers known for being reliable and courteous? I've no idea either. The crowd widened their eyes in shock, and they nearly turned mad. To insult garden owner Xue by calling her a pig, this fellow's guts sure wasn't just extraordinarily big, it was about to break through the heavens. Lu Zhon also nearly bit his own tongue.
I could mediate the matter regarding you touching the medicinal herbs by explaining that you're a master teacher. But now that you've insulted the garden owner publicly, how do you expect me to clean up your mess? If only I knew you were such a fiery figure, I would have never approached you. Now, all he could hope was for garden owner Xue not to blame the matter on the Lu clan as well. Song Chao, who had followed behind the crowd in hopes of exchanging the coffin back for his middle-tier spirit stone, also froze. As a 4-star master teacher, his eye of discernment was extraordinary. Even though garden owner Xue had only displayed a single move, he could tell that the latter's fighting prowess was impressive. Even the elders of his sect would find it hard to triumph over her. To say that such an expert was a pig. Zhong Shishore dared to shoot his mouth. There were many different reactions from the crowd, but one thought they shared in common was that the young man before them was a lunatic. Allow me to finish my words first. Even though garden owner Xue was already on the verge of snapping, Zhong Xian didn't seem worried in the least. Instead, he nonchalantly waved his hands and pointed at the earth-vein spirit vine. If I'm not mistaken, you often cultivate here, right? That's right. Garden owner Xue replied. However, her rage wasn't placated yet. If it wasn't in consideration of the other party's identity as a master teacher, she would have charged forward and killed the other party with a slap long ago. Due to the innumerable spirit herbs in the herb field, cultivating here could calm one's mind and make it easier for one to achieve a breakthrough. You mean that the issue with the earth-vein spirit vine is related with my cultivation? Frowning, garden owner Xue harumphed. Not only is it related, it is the root of the problem. Zhong Xian shook his head. Let me tell you the true problem with the earth-vein spirit vine. It is not it is ill, neither is it manifested with bugs, and it definitely isn't at the end of its lifespan. What it is suffering from was loss of spirit and soul. Loss of spirit and soul. Everyone was taken aback. Zhong Xian explained, all sentient beings in the world possess spirit, and a spirit herb, just like spirit tier weapons, possesses spirit. As the centerpiece of the herb garden, if the earth-vein spirit vine doesn't possess a spirit, how do you think it's able to allocate the required nutrients to each individual medicinal herb accurately? Everyone nodded their heads. Upon reaching spirit tier, weapons, tools, and even medicinal herb would gain spirit. This was how the term spirit herb came about. It was precisely due to the possession of spirit that they would reject cultivators whose Xianxia didn't align with them, grow faster upon hearing and seeing melodies and dances that delighted them, and discern whether one was a maiden. Without spirit, the earth-vein spirit vine would have lost an important part of itself. Under such circumstances, it is inevitable that it would carry an aura of death. A spirit herb losing its spirit is equivalent to a human losing its soul, so I can understand why the earth-vein spirit vine is on the verge of death. But what does it have to do with garden owner Xue's cultivation? Everyone was perplexed. Instead of answering the question, Zhong Xian turned to garden owner Xue and said, if I'm not mistaken, garden owner Xue has been stuck in transcendent mortal 4-dan clarifying turbidity realm for at least 7 to 8 decades already. 87 years. Garden owner Xue nodded her head. Having been stuck in the same realm for 87 years, it would be a lie if one were to say that one is not interested in making a breakthrough. However, transcendent mortal 5-dan consonant spirit realm is the first difficult hurdle of the 9 dans of the transcendent mortal stage. It requires one's soul to be completely harmonized with the surroundings and achieving consonance to accomplish a breakthrough. The reason why garden owner Xue has been stuck in the same realm is not due to her lack of talent but that her soul is damaged. Zhong Xian said. Why you? How did you know? Garden owner Xue's body abruptly stiffened upon hearing those words. She was still extremely furious a moment ago, ready to slaughter the fellow before her at any moment. However, upon hearing those words, the Xianxia that she had gathered abruptly dissipated out of shock. Her soul was indeed damaged. Otherwise, given her talent, she would have long achieved a breakthrough. She wouldn't have been stuck in the same realm for 87 years. But, this matter was a secret which she had never told anyone about. How in the world did the young man before her learn of it? It doesn't matter how I know of that matter. Even though your soul is damaged, you didn't give up like everyone else. Rather, you sought to repair the damage through different means. It seemed like you heard rumors that the spirit contained within spirit herbs could heal the damage, and so you created this herb garden and cultivated medicinal herbs. The reason why you refuse to sell them is so that you can absorb the spirit contained within them to mend the tear in your soul. Your persistence is admirable, but you went down the wrong path right from the start. If the spirit of a medicinal herb could make up for the deficiencies in a human, wouldn't that mean that anyone and everyone could reach consonant spirit realm? Xianxia looked at garden owner Shui with a look of disappointment. Despite being a master herbologist, despite living beside spirit herbs for so long, you were unable to see through this fact. What else can you be, if not a pig? Chapter 524, Treating the Spirit Vine Eye. Garden owner Shui's face flushed red. She wanted to lash out, but she couldn't find a word to say. As the #1 garden owner of Myriad Kingdom City, her level of comprehension toward medicinal herbs was in no way inferior to Elder Liu and Elder Lu, or perhaps, she might even be above them. This was precisely the reason why no one thought well of the situation after learning that even she was helpless before the problem of the earth vein spirit vine. Spirit herb and spirit tools, even though there was a spirit in their names, they were different from the souls of humans. Even though unique spirit herbs could nourish one's soul, there had never been a case where one could heal one's soul through absorbing the spirit contained within a spirit herb. The nature of the two were completely different from the start. It was just like how one couldn't expect a tiger to feast on grass like a goat when it's hungry. The crowd was astonished. Garden owner Shui was the most knowledgeable herbologist of their group. How could she possibly make such a fundamental error? It was no wonder why she refused to sell the medicinal herbs which she had nurtured. So, this was the reason. Since she hoped to heal her wounded soul through the spirit of the medicinal herbs, naturally, the more spirit herbs there were, the more effective the treatment should be. To a cultivator, there was no price too great to reach the consonant spirit realm. Just that, these were all her deepest secrets. How did this fellow learn of it? Everyone had examined the situation for so long, but they were unable to uncover the problem with the earth vein spirit vine. It was also completely out of their imagination that garden owner Shui would act like this. Just by touching the vine and watching a punching routine from garden owner Shui, that young man was actually able to deduce so much. Could things get any more exaggerated? Lu Zhon and Song Chao's eyes were also completely widened. They both knew that Xianxia was a capable master teacher, but they never thought that he would be that formidable. When garden owner Shui first entered the banquet hall, I had already noticed that something was amiss. Judging from her Xianxia and vitality, she should only be in her early hundreds. It's normal for a woman to value her appearance, and under normal circumstances, she should have never looked that old. Unless there was something causing it. Xianxia continued, thus, I paid close attention to the punching routine she executed just now. If I'm not mistaken, the fist art used was Great Heliacal Punch. Going by the conventional Xianxia pathway for the technique, one's Xianxia should gush out from the Baishan acupoint. Yet, she deviated slightly such that the Xianxia came out from her Zhongshan acupoint instead. As a transcendent mortal 4-dan expert, her grasp of cultivation should have already reached an incredible level. As such, there is only one explanation behind this peculiarity. Her Huiming acupoint is damaged, causing her to be unable to discern between the minute differences in her acupoints. Huiming is an acupoint governing one's perception, and it is one of the most important acupoints that determining the wholeness of one's soul. Since it's damaged, naturally, her soul must be damaged as well. I believe everyone should have seen the earth vein spirit vine for themselves. It isn't ill, and it isn't infested with bugs either. Yet, it's withering, and nothing seemed to work on it. At the very start, I also didn't think that it might be due to its spirit being absorbed until I saw the area where I deduced to be where garden owner Shui often cultivates. At which, Xianxia pointed toward the area where he touched the medicinal herbs previously. Everyone turned their gazes over. The grass growing in that area was both lush and green, seemingly faring much better than anywhere else in the herb field. I believe everyone can see that the grass in that area is growing much better than anywhere else in the herb field. When cultivating, spiritual energy would be drawn into one's surroundings, which would in turn nourish the plants in the area and allow them to grow better. However, take a look at this. Stepping forward, Xianxia stretched out his hand toward the grass. Who? The grass seemed to have seen something fearsome, and despite the lack of wind, they hurriedly avoided his hand. This is just ordinary grass that can be found everywhere. It shouldn't possess any spirit, and yet, it is now avoiding my hand on its own accord. From this, it can be deduced that someone has been absorbing spirit from the medicinal herbs, thus granting even ordinary plants like this to possess the ability to avoid harm. Chuckling lightly, with this, it isn't too difficult to deduce the rest. This. As expected of a master teacher, what frightening eye of discernment. Hearing the other party's explanation, everyone couldn't help but feel awed. They had long heard of a master teacher's fearsome discernment ability, and from the looks of it now, they indeed lived up to their name. With just a punching routine and a field of grass, the other party was able to deduce the entire story. If not for the fact that they were witnessing this situation for themselves, they would have never dared believe this to be possible. This. Song Chao swallowed a mouthful of saliva, and his face turned pale. The other party's deduction was completely rational, and he couldn't find any problem with it. While the other party had spoken of it easily, he knew that it was no easy feat to do so. Even a 4-star master teacher like him was incapable of doing the same. In fact, even his teacher and the elders of his sect couldn't possibly tell so much with just a glance. To uncover the root of the problem through examining insignificant details like this, linking up all of the evidences to put together a whole picture. Not to mention, they had to fit together perfectly. Was this fellow actually a seer? Even a 5-star master teacher should be incapable of doing so. Or, could the fellow before him actually be a 5-star master teacher? That would explain why he fell for the other party's impartation of heaven's will easily. Only now did he realize that there was a huge gap between him and this Xianxia. Song Chao was depressed. It seems like it'll be impossible for me to take back my middle-tier spirit stone. If I were really to ask him for it, I might even lose those low-tier spirit stones of mine. He was beguiled every single time he tried to approach the other party. He was afraid that not only would he fail to get back his middle-tier spirit stone, all of the fortune that he had raked up with great difficulty might even be swiped clean. Forget it, I should just bring this coffin back. Perhaps, if the elder is happy with this, I might be able to recoup my losses. Xianxia's means had truly left Song Chao terrified. But at the same time, he was also earnestly impressed by the other party as well. To be able to deduce the entire situation with just a few minor clues, as expected of a master teacher who could beguile him. While everyone was overwhelmed by shock, garden owner Shue's body was trembling violently in disbelief. I found that method in an ancient book, and throughout the years, the damage on my soul has indeed alleviated a bit. Back then, when her soul was injured, she was doomed to be unable to reach consonant spirit realm in her entire life. However, she didn't believe it, and after flipping through innumerable ancient texts, she finally found the method of absorbing spirit from medicinal herbs to nourish her own soul. Even though she carried her doubts to the feasibility of the solution, she had no other better alternatives. Besides, after years of hard work, her damaged soul had indeed recovered to a small extent. Alleviated a bit. Xianxia shook his head. Aren't you still very far from making a full recovery? Do you think that you can live for another 80 years? Garden owner Shue's body trembled. There was a limit to the lifespan of a transcendent mortal expert. Being beyond 100, she had already lived half of her lifespan. At the rate which she was recovering at, could her soul possibly make a full recovery before she comes to an end of her lifespan? Even if it did, what use would it be when she was already knocking on death's door? Then, what was the use of it in the first place? I was wrong. All along, garden owner Shue had been thinking of how she could heal her own soul and attempt to break into the consonant spirit realm. However, at this moment, she finally realized that it was nothing more than a pipe dream. Consonant spirit realm was destined to be beyond her reach. Shaking her head, she seemed to have suddenly aged decade in an instant. Seeing her state, even though everyone felt sympathy, they couldn't find any suitable words to console her. She had driven herself with this faith for 80 years, and yet, her bubble was burst in an instant. No one could take such a blow lightly. After a long period of time, garden owner Shue finally pulled herself together and asked the young man before her, "Xianxia, Is there any way to save this earth vein spirit vine? Since the other party was able to determine the problem with a glance, perhaps he might have a solution for the problem. Since her fate was sealed, she decided not to struggle any longer. However, this herb garden had accompanied her for more than half of her life. She didn't want to see it destroyed just like that. As you have cultivated here frequently over many years, this vine is nothing more than an empty shell now. It'll be difficult to revert it back to its original state. However, I do have a solution in mind, but it will be expensive.
Xianxia said.
If it was before the trip to the Soul Oracle tomb, given his limited understanding of souls then, it would indeed be difficult for him to deal with such a problem. However, after attaining Mo Huansheng's lifetime worth of knowledge and comprehension, his understanding towards souls had reached an extremely profound level. Even though the earth vein spirit vine was on the verge of dying, he was still able to treat it. Just that, it might take a little more effort. Upon hearing that there was hope, garden owner Shui hurriedly said in agitation, "As long as you can save it, I'm willing to pay any price." Everyone else also turned their gazes over. Even expert herbologists like them had never heard that a spirit herb losing its spirit could be treated. Thus, they were intent to learn a thing or two from this. The solution is actually quite simple: grafting.
Xianxia said.
Grafting.
Everyone was perplexed.
As herbologists, the term grafting wasn't foreign to them. It consisted of implanting a bud onto the stem of another plant to form a whole plant. Many new spirit herbs were created through this mean. That's right. Plants can be grafted, spirits are the same as well. Xianxia chuckled lightly. As long as you can find another earth vein spirit vine bud with intact spirit and graft it to this spirit vein, over time, the spirit of the bud will fuse together with the original earth vein spirit vine, thus forming one entity. If the grafting succeeded, the two plants would become one, and the spirit of the original earth vein spirit vine would be replenished. However, given the normal rate of growth of earth vein spirit vines, it'll be hard to succeed without decades passing. By then, all of the medicinal herbs in your herb garden would have long died. Thus, the growth of the earth vein spirit vine must be hastened, and the price of doing so will be extremely heavy. The concept of grafting was simple in theory, but it was terribly difficult in practice. Firstly, the implantation of the spirit from the bud onto the earth vein spirit vine would already require the ability of a soul oracle, thus making it out of question for almost all herbologists. Also, during the fusing process, one had to ensure that the original earth vein spirit vine would not reject the Budn truth. This grafting was no different from possession. Even though the original earth vein spirit vine was empty at the moment, it would still be difficult for the immature spirit of a bud to possess the body of such a huge vein. It was just like an ant trying to pull a carriage, and the price for hastening the growth of the spirit would be extremely hefty.
What do you need?
I'll prepare it all now. Garden owner Shui gritted her teeth. If the earth vein spirit vine were to die, all of the medicinal herbs in the herb garden would die. Her loss would only be greater then. An earth vein spirit vine bud, 50 medicinal herbs with at least 100 years of maturity, 10 buckets of stemless water. Xianxia began reciting the things he required for the operation. Hearing those words, the crowd stared at one another with an awful complexion. The price was indeed a heavy one to pay. Ordinary herbologist clans would surely be unable to take out all of these things, let alone use them to save a single plant. All right, I'll prepare them now. Hearing the items that were required, garden owner Shui's eyebrows twitched as well. Even so, it was still within an acceptable range for her. Wait a moment. Just as she was about to prepare the goods, the young man's voice sounded once more. Prepare a sentiment drowning flower as well. It'll be best if it has a maturity of 500 years and above. Also, bring as many middle-tier spirit stones as you can. Chapter 525. Nurturing Soul Rouse Grass Success. Sentiment drowning flower. All right. Garden owner Shui nodded. But soon, her face reddened in embarrassment as she said, "As for middle-tier spirit stone, I only have one here." She had a few sentiment drowning flowers in her herb garden, and the oldest one had already reached a maturity of 700 years. However, as for middle-tier spirit stones, even a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle expert like her only had one in her possession. Only a Tier 2 empire like Huanyu Empire had the rights to trade a spirit stone of that tier. The Myriad Kingdom Alliance usually traded using low-tier spirit stones. Even the royal family could only take out a few pieces at once, let alone her.
Only one. One is fine as well. Xianxia nodded.
The sentiment drowning flower was for his personal interest, but the middle-tier spirit stone wasn't. For the spirit of a weak plant to grow swiftly, the pure spiritual energy in a middle-tier spirit stone was a necessity. If he were to only use low-tier spirit stones, the process would take significantly longer. I'll go make the preparations now.
Garden owner Shui hurriedly left. Soon, she returned.
It would be difficult for others to gather the items that Xianxia had asked for, and it would be impossible to do so without several months of effort. However, as the #1 herb garden in Myriad Kingdom City, the herb garden had nearly all of the medicinal herbs that Xianxia needed. As such, it didn't take too long for her to gather it all. In fact, she even managed to find a bud of the earth vein spirit vine. I require absolute tranquility for my treatment. Garden owner Shui, I'll have to ask you to invite everyone out of the premises. Seeing that everything was prepared, Xianxia waved his hands. Grafting the spirit of the bud onto the original earth vein spirit vine would require him to use the ability of a soul oracle. Even though its inheritance had already terminated long ago and very few would be able to recognize it, Xianxia felt that it would be better to be safe than sorry.
Yes.
Garden owner Shui knew that such means tended to be an exclusive secret, and it was normal for one to be unwilling to show it in public. Thus, she nodded her head and led the group out of the herb field. Only after seeing that everyone had left did Xianxia heave a huge sigh of relief. Looking at the spirit vine bud before him, Xianxia drew out his soul and began the treatment.
Why is Xianxia not out yet?
Do you think that he'll be able to get the sentiment drowning flower? In the banquet hall, Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai walked about nervously, shooting glances at the herb field from time to time. Only herbologists and master teachers were allowed to enter the spirit field. As Xianxia's accompaniment, they weren't permitted entry. As such, they could only wait outside. Who knew that this wait would take 5 to 6 hours? The sky had already set, but he hadn't returned yet. This had left them anxious and worried. Jin Songhai hesitated for a moment before saying, "It should be fine. After all, he's Xianxia." Ever since he'd become acquainted with that young man, no matter what the other party did, he would be able to accomplish it easily. He truly made one suspect whether there was anything he was incapable of. I know Xianxia's capability, but garden owner Shui's eccentric personality is well known throughout the capital. She doesn't even hesitate to disregard father. Considering that an issue had cropped up with the earth vein spirit vine, she must be even more anxious now. It probably won't be easy for him to purchase the required medicinal herb from her under such circumstances. I'm afraid that, as soon as Xianxia speaks, the other party might chase him out straight away. Even though Zhao Feiwu admired Xianxia's capability, she was still worried for the latter. After all, this garden owner Shui was someone who couldn't be forced to do anything. Everything was based on her mood. If she was in good mood, she could sell you anything you wish for as long as you had money to pay her. But given that her entire herb field was on the verge of dying, her mood must be terrible. It would be highly difficult for Xianxia to purchase medicinal herbs from her. Perhaps, Xianxia might even be chased out before he got a chance to speak. After all, such things had happened before. This was exactly what happened with the envoy of the Alliance head residence back then. Now that you speak of it, it does seem possible. Worry also flashed across Jin Songhai's eyes. Xianxia seems determined to obtain that sentiment drowning flower. If it comes down to it, I'll plead with my father to help him. With his help, garden owner Shui should probably, at least give it some thought. A moment later, after seeing that Xianxia wasn't back then, Zhao Feiwu couldn't help but declare. But even she was unconfident about the matter. After all, if her father's name was effective, the envoy wouldn't have been chased out back then. Garden owner Shui was powerful and didn't give in to threat or persuasion. Even though Zhao Feiwu tended to be witty when dealing such matters, she couldn't find a single solution to this problem. Before absolute power,
All strategy was meaningless. We can only hope so. Look, someone is coming. Jin Songhai nodded. Just as he was about to console Zhao Feiwu, he suddenly caught sight of a figure before him and pointed. A silhouette was slowly walking toward the banquet hall. It's Xianxia. It was the person whom they had been talking about all this while, Zhongxian. Without a doubt, he must have been chased out. Seeing him appear alone, Zhao Feiwu said bitterly before walking up to him with Jin Songhai. Xianxia, you're out. Don't worry about being unable to get the sentiment drowning flower. I'll help you plead with my father to stand up for you. Seeing the pale and wearied face of the young man before her, Zhao Feiwu deduced that he must have suffered great humiliation and hurriedly consoled. Indeed. Garden owner Shui is known for being eccentric and difficult, so you need not worry too much about it. Jin Songhai said. Ah. Before Zhongxian could say anything, he ended up being consoled by the duo. He didn't know whether he should cry or laugh at this situation. Just as he was about to explain what truly happened, some hurried footsteps suddenly sounded. Garden owner Shui and a few other people rushed into the banquet hall. What do you all intend to do? Seeing the anxious look on their faces, Jin Songhai stepped forward to shield Zhongxian and the princess. Zhongxia, here is 100 medicinal herbs with a maturity of 500 years. It's a token of my appreciation, so do accept it. Furthermore, from today onward, you shall be an eternal friend of my Western herb garden. If you have anything you need, feel free to speak. I'll supply you everything within my means for free. Disregarding the anxious Jin Songhai, garden owner Shui walked up to Zhongxian, bowed deeply, and passed a storage ring over. Eternal friend. Free. Seeing the eccentric garden owner Shui, who dared to even snub the Alliance head residents, bowing to Zhongxian and even gifting him with medicinal herbs, Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai's eyes widened in shock. What in the world happened? Wasn't this fellow supposed to be an incredibly obstinate person? Why did she suddenly bow as though a humble student, even going to the extent of gifting so many precious herbs? Compared to Zhongxia, our proficiency as herbologists is indeed lacking. It's all thanks to Zhongxia's credit that the Earth Vein Spirit Vine was revived. Just as they were perplexed over what was going on, they suddenly heard the discussion of the returning crowd. Zhongxia has cured the Earth Vein Spirit Vine. Coming to a realization, the duo stared at one another frenziedly. They had heard Zhongxia's discussion with Lu Zhon previously. For a fellow who didn't even know what a herbologist was to fix the Earth Vein Spirit Vine, which stumped even the master herbologists. Why did it sound like something that came out from a novel? Not only did Zhongxia manage to buy the sentiment drowning flower, he was even escorted out of the herb garden by garden owner Shui, and the latter promised to supply him with whatever medicinal herbs he needed in the future. On top of that, you said that he treated the Earth Vein Spirit Vine. In the Alliance head residence, Alliance head Zhao widened his eyes in shock as he heard the report from his daughter and Jin Songhai. For a very long time, he was unable to recover from his shock. Seated cross-legged within a room, Zhongxian stared at the crimson flower before him. A fresh sentiment drowning flower with a maturity of 700 years. With sufficient medicinal herbs and the means of a soul oracle, it wasn't too difficult to graft the spirit vine bud onto the original Earth Vein Spirit Vine. Naturally, after he succeeded, garden owner Shui immediately thanked him profusely. His motive at the herb garden this time around was the sentiment drowning grass. After obtaining what he needed, he immediately returned back to the Alliance head residence with Zhao Feiwu and Jin Songhai and shut himself within a room in the lodgings that Zhao Feiwu prepared for him. It was an average-sized residence, but it was very close to the Alliance head residence. There were guards, servants, and maids residing in the residence, so Sun Qiong was spared the additional effort of hiring them. After arranging a resting spot for the demon-sank beast, Zhongxian returned back to his room and took out the sentiment drowning flower. I have to draw my soul out first. A soul slowly gushed out from his acupoint. Raising his hand, the flower before his physical body flew to him. To nurture a soul-rouse grass, one has to inscribe a formation to gather soul energy on a plant capable of harnessing soul energy. After which, one has to supply soul energy to the plant so hasten its growth. Recalling the cultivation method of a soul-rouse grass,
Zhongxian's sight fell on the flower before him. Even though the sentiment drowning flower was a spirit herb, it didn't possess sentience. As such, it was easier for it to house the soul energy of a soul oracle. If it was any other sentient medicinal herb, the herb might be destroyed as soon as he tried to infuse his soul energy into it. Naturally, he would be unable to successfully nurture a soul-rouse grass like that. Driving his soul energy, a powerful energy enveloped the flower, slowly morphing the appearance and shape of the flower. After cultivating the Heaven's Path soul art, Zhongxian's soul energy in itself had already reached the level equivalent to the strength of a transcendent mortal 2-dan cultivator, and that was even above that of his Xianxia cultivation. The cultivation of soul-rouse grass wasn't easy, but given his current level of soul energy, it wasn't an issue. Thus, he spent 3 days holed up in his room. Finally, on the 4th day, Wang, the crimson flower before him shook and turned into a white seedling. The nurturing of the soul-rouse grass was a success. Now, I only have to nourish it with my soul energy every day. It should mature within 2 months. Zhongxian nodded his head in satisfaction. The sentiment drowning grass had been successfully cultivated into a soul-rouse grass, but as it was still a seedling, it couldn't be used yet. However, Zhongxian was in no hurry either. In just 1 or 2 months' time, it should mature fully. Once he crafts the soul-rouse incense with it, he would be able to save Lu Chong. The past 3 days of exerting his soul energy in his room had left him slightly wearied. Returning his soul back to his body, he took out the middle-tier spirit stone he obtained from Song Chao and absorbed it. After he had recovered from his fatigue, he walked out of the room. The sun hung high in the sky, and even before walking into the main hall, Zhongxian saw Sun Qiong walking over. "Young master, Su Shi and Ling Shi are here to meet you." Su Shi, Su Fan, and Ling Shi, Ling Yuheng, were the 2 4-star master teachers who'd invited him to participate in the Master Teacher Pavilion back when he was still in Qianwu Kingdom. How did they know that I was here? Zhongxian was taken aback for a moment before shaking his head upon coming to a realization. Zhongxian hadn't concealed his trail ever since arriving at the Myriad Kingdom city. He even went to the Western Herb Garden to solve the issue surrounding the Earth Vein Spirit Vine. As one of the most powerful organizations in the region, it wasn't difficult for the Master Teacher Pavilion to discover his location. Zhongxian had previously said that he would look for them as soon as he arrived at Myriad Kingdom City. However, it had been a few days since his arrival and yet he hadn't gone to the Master Teacher Pavilion yet. Most probably, they were getting impatient and thus they came here looking for him. Let's go and take a look. Understanding the situation, Zhongxian strode off, heading to the main hall. Chapter 526. Selection Round. Stepping into the lounge, Zhongxian saw Su Shi and Ling Shi seated on the chairs by the side. Upon seeing him, the duo seemed visibly relieved. If not for the ruckus he had caused at the herb garden a while ago, they wouldn't have known that Xianxia was already in the city. As soon as Zhongxian entered, Su Shi immediately stared at him expectantly and asked, "May I know if Xianxia is in Myriad Kingdom City as well?" Back in Qianwu Kingdom, Xianxia had helped him reach the 7th circulation of the miniature solo art, thus inducing a huge leap in his cultivation. Even until now, he was still grateful to the other party for his help. Inviting Zhongxian over to the Master Teacher Pavilion was only one of the reasons behind his visit. The other one was to meet his benefactor. After all, the other party was a master teacher who was likely to exceed 6-star. Otherwise, there was no need for the 2 of them to come personally just to meet a 2-star master teacher. "My teacher is currently wandering around the lands. I have no idea where he is either," Zhongxian replied. The teacher Zhongxian spoke of was actually referring to Zhongxian himself. It was already so difficult for him to fool this duo given that there were so many experts here. If he were to get caught playing off as Xianxia here, he would surely be a goner. In any case, just the existence of Xianxia itself was sufficient to induce fear in others. There was no need for him to take such a risk. If people were to realize that Xianxia was actually a fake, the entire situation could backlash on him. Upon hearing that Xianxia wasn't around, Su Shi and Ling Shi shook their heads in disappointment. However, they soon recovered and said, "In truth, Ling Shi and I are here because we have something we require your help on." "Su Shi, please speak." Zhongxian nodded. "It's like that. We have invited you to participate in the Master Teacher Tournament before. May I know if Xianxia has talked to you about the matter yet? Xianxia asked. Back then, in Qianwu Kingdom, they had once brought up the matter with Xianxia, but Xianxia seemed to be slightly hesitant about agreeing. In the end, it was Xianxia who accepted it in his stead. Even though Xianxia said he would persuade Xianxia on their behalf, it was best to double confirm the matter before jumping into any conclusion. My teacher has told me about it. As long as I become the champion, I'll be rewarded with middle-tier spirit stones. Don't worry, I've agreed to it already. Xianxia nodded his head. Cough cough. Choking on their saliva, Xianxia and Xianxia fell speechless. Champion. You sure know how to dream. 28 powers consisting of innumerable experts. Your talent might be formidable, but they are also geniuses, and not to mention, they have cultivated longer than you. Our motive in looking for you is just in hopes that you could win us a better placing. Even top 10 seems out of reach. Champion. They would only dare to say such words in their dreams. It's like that. The Master Teacher Tournament is a battle among the geniuses of the 28 powers, and our Myriad Kingdom Alliance is given the privilege of playing host this year. Pavilion Master Kang hopes for us to get a better ranking this year. Thus, we gathered the top-notch geniuses from throughout the lands for them to pit it out in advance and narrow the group down to just 2 to participate in the tournament. After hesitating for a moment, Su Fan spoke his motive. Pit it out in advance. Yes. A total of 6 candidates have been nominated by the elders. Xianxia said. As the Myriad Kingdom Alliance was hosting the Master Teacher Tournament this time around, Pavilion Master Kang regarded this event very highly and he hoped that they could win a much better placing from before. As such, he passed down an order for the elders to nominate the most talented genius they could find, and it was for this purpose that Xianxia and Xianxia visited Qianwu Kingdom. However, they weren't the only elders in the Master Teacher Pavilion. The others also made their nominations too, and a total of 6 candidates were chosen. The duo had to spend a lot of effort to confirm Xianxia's placing as a candidate as well. Otherwise, given Xianxia's identity as a 2-star master teacher, how could he possibly be qualified to compete with all the other geniuses? What you mean is that, you wish for me to participate in an internal selection round conducted by the Alliance's Master Teacher Pavilion. Xianxia quickly understood what the other party was driving at. That's right. Only 2 participants from each power are allowed for the Master Teacher Pavilion. Thus, there's a need for us to conduct a selection round among the 6 candidates. The 2 finalized candidates will become a target of grooming for the Master Teacher Pavilion for the next 2 months so as to prepare them for the Master Teacher Tournament. Xianxia said. The most practical way of getting a good placing was to train harder. Even if it was a last-minute effort, 2 months should be sufficient to achieve significant results. After hearing the explanation, Xianxia came to a realization. The Master Teacher Tournament was a huge event which the Myriad Kingdom Alliance and 27 other powers were involved with. Even with Xianxia and Xianxia's recommendations, the Alliance couldn't give the slot so easily to him. After all, he came from a humble kingdom. It had only been 3 months since his rise, and it was extremely normal for him to be doubted by others. Xianxia didn't think much of the situation. In any case, he was also curious to see where he ranked among the geniuses of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. After settling Lu Chong's matter, he would concentrate his effort on cultivating so as to reach 9-star Master Teacher before 30. Otherwise, once the innate fetal poison made its move, everything would be for naught. Having read through innumerable books, Xianxia learned that Master Teachers weren't just about strength and capability. Reputation was also of essence. Reputation was credibility, and without a good reputation, how could a Master Teacher win the trust of others? As such, this was one of the less tangible criteria taken into account when one was applying for a promotion. And the easiest way to accrue reputation was to join the Master Teacher Tournament. Besides, to raise his cultivation, Xianxia needed innumerable cultivation techniques to form the Heaven's Path Divine Art and sufficient middle-tier spirit stones. Even though Xianxia was skilled in the art of beguiling, there was a limit to what he could gather through such. If he could achieve incredible results during the Master Teacher Tournament, it should become much easier for him to gather spirit stones. After thinking all of these through, Xianxia had nothing to hesitate about anymore. Thus, he asked, when does the selection round begin? According to Pavilion Master Kang's intentions, it's supposed to be conducted a few days ago. However, you had yet to appear, and so, the both of us tried all ways to postpone the selection round. Now that you're here, we can finally begin. Seeing that the young man before them didn't reject the matter, Su Shu and Ling Shi heaved a sigh of relief. After all, they had to fight very hard to delay the selection round by several days, and there were many who were displeased by their action. If Xianxia were to really refuse to join the selection round, they would be in trouble. Is it conducted in the Master-Teacher Pavilion? Xianxia asked. That's right. The duo nodded their heads. Then let's go over then. Xianxia stood up. Since he had decided on the matter, there was nothing for him to hesitate about. Ah! Seeing that Xianxia was in a rush to head over, the duo smiled bitterly. Xianxia, hold on for a moment. Allow me to introduce to you the other candidates first. This way, you will be prepared when you meet them. Of the 5 candidates, 3 are from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion. The most famous among them is Ruohuan Gongzi, Jun Ruohuan. He's the head of the 4 gentlemen in Myriad Kingdom City, the direct disciple of Pavilion Master Kang. He's 29 this year, and he passed his 4-star examination at the start of the year, thus making him a full-fledged 4-star primary master teacher. Xianxia nodded his head. He had seen a 4-star primary master teacher genius before as well, Song Chao. Even though that fellow seemed a little slow-witted before him, as a 4-star master teacher, he surely possessed an astonishing eye of discernment and unbelievable talent. Jun Ruohuan should be the same as well. After him is the direct disciple of the Master Teacher Pavilion's elder high, Fu Xiaochen, Fu Shi. He was evaluated as a 3-star pinnacle master teacher 2 years ago, and since then, he hasn't taken any examinations at all. Thus, no one knows the current extent of his ability. Even so, based on my estimates, he should be on par with Ruohuan Gongzi. These 2 are the most popular candidates this time around, and thus, they will be your greatest competitors as well. As for the remaining 3, one of them is Elder Feng's disciple, while the other 2 are picked out from the vassal kingdoms under the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. They are all 3-star pinnacle master teachers under 30 as well. Su Shi quickly briefed Xianxia on the background of the other 5 candidates. Even the weakest of them is a 3-star pinnacle master teacher. Xianxia was astonished. One would already be considered as an incredible talent for reaching 2-star beneath 30 in Shenyuan Kingdom, and yet here, there were 5 who far exceeded that level, and one of them had even reached 4-star. As expected of the Alliance, the center of power and affluence of the innumerable kingdoms. Thinking that Xianxia might have lost his confidence, Su Shi consoled, "Indeed, but you need not worry about that. Your master teacher rank might be beneath them, but your eye of discernment and knowledge are in no way inferior to them. I think that you still stand a good chance." If not for the latter's outstanding performance in Qianwu Kingdom previously, the duo wouldn't have gone to such extents of recommending him. After all, an ordinary 2-star master teacher wouldn't stand a chance against that lineup at all. What will be tested in the master teacher tournament? Xianxia asked doubtfully. He had only heard briefly about the master teacher tournament from the duo, and as such, he didn't know much detail about it. The books he had read also had a limited description on the matter. You don't know? The duo was taken aback for a moment before they flew into a frenzy. Xianxia didn't explain the matter to you. They had told Xianxia about Zhongsha's participation in the master teacher tournament back in Qianwu Kingdom, and so, they thought that Xianxia would at least offer some guidance or advice to Xianxia beforehand. If that was the case, with the guidance from a 6-star or above master teacher, they would stand a much better chance. But who knew that? After so long, Xianxia actually knew nothing at all? Are you mistaken? Half of the reason why the duo insisted on having Xianxia participate in the competition was because of his outstanding performance, and the other half was due to their trust in Xianxia's teaching capability. Since Xianxia had agreed on the matter, surely he wouldn't make his student embarrass himself. But why in the world did Xianxia not know anything at all? My teacher hasn't told me anything about it. Xianxia replied. Hearing the other party's reply, the duo rolled their eyes. Was Xianxia simply that courageous, or did he possess absolute trust in his student? Shaking his head, Xianxia could only start explaining the matter helplessly. The Master Teacher Tournament assesses a master teacher on his overall capability. The test varies every year, but they are centered around the fundamentals of master teachers, such as soul depth, cultivation realm, teaching capability, understanding of cultivation, offering pointers, discerning flaws. In truth, it is similar to a master teacher examination, just that it will be slightly stricter. For example, in a normal master teacher examination, one is considered to have passed the examination just by meeting the passing requirement within a given period of time. On the other hand, the Master Teacher Tournament will gauge one by the duration one takes to accomplish a task, and the one who takes the shortest time will be victorious. Xianxia came to a realization. This was extremely similar to the competitions in his previous life. Take a normal 100-meter race for example. If A took 10 seconds whereas B took 3 days, naturally, A would be the winner. Under the pressure of time, one's mental fortitude would be put to the test. Often, there were capable master teachers who found themselves unable to perform under such stress. After explaining the matter a little longer, Xianxia's understanding of the Master Teacher Tournament deepened. In truth, the Master Teacher Tournament was a battlefield where different master teachers pitted their capability against one another, and the strongest one would emerge victorious. As long as one's foundation was strong, one need not fear anything in the tournament. This was the reason why Xianxia and Lingxia went through so much trouble to go to Qianwu Kingdom just to recruit Xianxia into their team. After introducing the tournament, Xianxia said, "All right, let's go to the Master Teacher Pavilion." Even though the tests in the selection round are likely to be different from the real tournament itself, the main idea is still there. This time, Pavilion Master Kang has come up with the tests personally. I think this will be a good experience for you to prepare for the real tournament. UN. Nodding his head, Xianxia instructed Sun Qiong on several matters before leaving to the Master Teacher Pavilion with the duo. Chapter 527. Pavilion Master Kang. The Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion is the headquarter of the Master Teacher Pavilions of the vassal kingdoms under the Alliance. It was located at a distance not too far from the Alliance head residence, and the group didn't take long to reach their destination. It was a grand building with a majestic hall. As soon as they stepped into the lounge, they immediately saw a massive statue of a person holding onto a scroll and looking into the distance. In his eyes was compassion for all living beings in the world. The sight of the statue removed all negative emotions from one, putting one into a state of calmness. Empyrean Xianxia. Taking a brief scan of the hall, there were at least 100 people dressed in long robe here. So many master teachers. Xianxia was shocked. Those who were qualified to wear the long robe were master teachers who had obtained their emblems. Putting aside the ranks of the master teachers here, just the number of them was already astonishing in itself. One must know that Qianxian Kingdom didn't even have a single master teacher. And yet, there were over 100 of them here, and many of them were 2-star as well. As expected of the center of the Alliance, the cultural hub for the kingdoms. Fearsome. Actually, most of those master teachers aren't from Myriad Kingdom City. Every month, a 4-star master teacher conducts a lecture at the square outside the Master Teacher Pavilion, and many master teachers visit the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion just for this event, Xianxia explained. While the huge amount of resources flowing through Myriad Kingdom City was a reason why the cultivators here were strong, what that played a larger part to that was the presence of high-ranked master teachers. The lessons of such master teachers tended to be more insightful, and if one managed to obtain one of their tutelage jade token, ones could receive tailored guidance on their cultivation, thus inducing swift improvements. In fact, it could be said that if Myriad Kingdom City didn't have this Master Teacher Pavilion, it would be impossible for so many transcendent mortal experts to appear here. Xianxia nodded his head in agreement as he scanned the surroundings. Not only were there many master teachers here, there were also some who came here to study. There were many chambers in the surroundings of the hall, and as long as one was willing to pay a suitable price, one could be given a one-to-one guidance session any time they wished. But of course, the higher ranked a master teacher was, the more expensive the payment would be and the more difficult it would be to make an appointment with them. After all, there were a limited number of 4-star master teachers here, and they couldn't possibly be spending all of their time on teaching others. On top of the chambers, there were also some huge auditoriums within the compound. The poorer cultivators would often attend lectures conducted in the auditoriums instead. Even though the results would be far poorer than a one-to-one guidance session, one could save quite a bit of money through opting for this instead. Thus, it is quite a popular alternative. 2-star master teacher Huang Chen's Xianxia Realm Introduction Lecture still has 2 slots. Is there anyone interested in signing up? 3-star master teacher by Mu's How a Zhizuan Advanced Realm Should Battle still has 3 slots. It's a small classroom of just 10 people, and it'll only cost 5 low-tier spirit stones. Walking through the hall, Xianxia could see quite a lot of people raising a board as they rallied for participants. Written on the board was the name of the master teacher, their master teacher rank, the content, and the timing of their lecture. There were many common problems that cultivators would meet with in their cultivation, and based on their needs, they would sign up for the lesson they deemed most appropriate for their condition. While those who attended the lesson could copy down and repeat the content of the lecture to another, without the impartation of heaven's will, a skill exclusive to only master teachers, the same words would result in very different effects. Otherwise, if one could play the role of a master teacher just by repeating the content of a lecture, master teachers wouldn't be such a prestigious and irreplaceable occupation. The higher the tier of a kingdom, the greater the standing of a master teacher. In Myriad Kingdom City, even the Alliance head would have to treat a 4-star master teacher with utmost respect. Xianxia said as he stroked his beard, his tone carrying a tinge of pride. Being a master teacher was known as the #1 occupation in the world, and at 4-star, one was already in existence that countless people could only look up to throughout their life. UN. Xianxia nodded his head. He knew about the prestigious standing of master teachers as well. If not for the immense standing of this occupation shielding him, his astonishing accomplishments would surely have caused him to be kidnapped, dissected, and experimented on for research. It was precisely because everyone knew that he was a master teacher and that he had a powerful teacher backing him that they thought it was natural for him to achieve such results. After all, a 6-star master teacher was an existence unimaginable to them. It wouldn't be surprising if a 6-star master teacher was involved in they deemed impossible. While master teachers enjoy tremendous prestige, they carry a burden equaling it as well. Back then, Xianxia ruled that master teachers have to be a role model to the world and bring enlightenment to everyone, regardless of their background. Over the years, the Master Teacher Pavilion has expanded into all kingdoms, and the strength of the human race has indeed been brought to new heights as well. Xianxia said. While he felt proud, he knew that this was nothing for him to brag about. Rather, tied along together with it was a heavy responsibility to shoulder. What a master teacher seeks to achieve is not personal glory, but the greatness of the entire human race. The greatest honor that a master teacher could receive was to have his own students surpass him. Indeed. Xianxia nodded in agreement. The more he came to know about the responsibilities of a master teacher, the more he shared some thoughts. When he saw the rapid growth of his student, what he felt was no longer envy but delight. This was the essence of a teacher. There was no other occupation that was the same as this. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. I'll take you to meet Pavilion Master Kang first before we continue on with the selection round. Shaking his head, Xianxia accounted grimly. Pavilion Master Kang is the most talented genius of our Master Teacher Pavilion for the past 100 years. He's a 4-star pinnacle master teacher, and he has a straightforward and earnest personality. He values humility and so, when you meet him later, make sure to listen to his teachings earnestly. If you were to anger him, you might be stripped of your candidacy, so take note of what you say. Pavilion Master Kang was younger than Xianxia and Xianxia, and he was the direct disciple of the previous Pavilion Master. Even so, he was the one who had the final say regarding the candidacy for the Master Teacher Tournament. The two of them had paid a heavy price for Xianxia's slot, so they couldn't allow anything to go wrong now. Don't worry. I've always been a humble person. Xianxia nodded earnestly. You? Humble? Xianxia and Xianxia fell speechless. Do you think that the Master Teacher Pavilion is incapable of digging all that you've done? Destroying the Master Teacher Pavilion when taking the Master Teacher examination, barging into the Wall of Dilemma in the Physician Guild, forcing the previous guild leader to step down. And not too long ago, you challenged the harmonious stream of flowing goblets in Honghai City and nearly caused the Appraiser Hall to close down at the Formation Master Guild. you tore down the other party's wall.
Look at your own records. Which part of it doesn't show that you're a troublemaker? And you still dare to tell us that you're humble? If you are humble, there would be no arrogant people in the world anymore. Cough, cough. Try to cut down on your words when you meet Pavilion Master Kang. We'll speak for you instead. What you should focus on now is to condition yourself and prepare for the selection round later on, Xianxia instructed.
UN.
Xianxia nodded his head. He was delighted to be spared the hassle of talking as well. Amidst the conversation of the trio, they soon arrived outside a room.
Elder Su, Elder Ling.
The young man guarding outside the room clasped his fist and bowed.
Is Pavilion Master Kang in?
Xianxia asked.
The Pavilion Master is inside. This way, please. Given the other parties standing as an elder and a 4-star master teacher, the young man immediately led them in without any hesitation. Unlike the rooms allocated to the other master teacher, this one was much more spacious. Many bookshelves filled with all kinds of books were placed against the wall. A stern-looking middle-aged man was currently standing by the side of the bookshelf, browsing through a book in his hand. The young man stepped forward and bowed. Pavilion Master, Elder Su, and Elder Ling are here.
UN.
You're here. Take a seat wherever you want. Lifting his gaze, the middle-aged man smiled. Xianxia turned to look at the middle-aged man. Even though the middle-aged man wasn't as advanced in age as Xianxia and Xianxia, he exuded an incredible aura of authority. It was similar to the sensation he felt when facing a lion's head Zhao, just that it was even more intense. This was especially so for his eyes. His dark irises were deep, and they gleamed with wisdom, seemingly capable of seeing through all facade. His soul depth is probably no lower than 14.0, Xianxia thought. Every 3.0 soul depth was a demarcation point. A 4-star master teacher would possess a soul depth of at least 12.0, whereas a 5-star master teacher would possess a soul depth of at least 15.0. A normal 4-star master teacher's soul depth would vary between 12.0 to 15.0, but due to the difficulty in raising one's soul depth, most 4-star master teachers only had a soul depth of around 12.0. Taking Song Chao for example, his soul depth was only 12.0. This was also why he was completely helpless against Xianxia's impartation of heaven's will. Even well-established 4-star master teachers like Xianxia and Xianxia only had a soul depth of 13.0. Yet, Pavilion Master Kang's soul depth was actually above 14.0. Considering his current age, as long as he didn't fall, it was just a matter of time before he becomes a 5-star master teacher. It seems like his soul depth is slightly higher than mine. After the consumption of 2 golden pages, 2 acknowledgements as a celestial master teacher, and a soul tempering of mentor's calligraphy, Xianxia's current soul depth had reached 14.1. However, based on his estimation, the other party's soul depth seemed to be slightly higher than his. Suddenly, a thought appeared in Xianxia's mind. I wonder if my impartation of heaven's will work on him. Before heading to the Soul Oracle tomb, Xianxia's soul depth was only 12.1, 0.1 higher than Song Chao's. Even so, he still managed to beguile the other party. In other words, as a celestial master teacher, it was easier for him to convince others through his impartation of heaven's will. Having gone through 2 acknowledgements, even though his soul depth was lower than the other party's, could his impartation of heaven's will possibly work on the other party? However, one of the requirements of using the impartation of heaven's will is to be on the side of reason. Only when one's logic is impeccable will it work. If I can't find any flaws on him, it'll be difficult for me to beguile him. Xianxia didn't think that he could succeed easily, even though he had thought of giving it a try. The impartation of heaven's will was centered around trust and credibility. Without knowing the other party's flaws to exploit to win trust and credibility, it would be difficult for Xianxia to succeed. His eye of insight was ineffective given the other party's cultivation of transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle. Under the condition that the other party didn't execute a battle technique, it was impossible for him to uncover the flaws of the other party. These thoughts floated in Xianxia's mind for a moment before disappearing. Following which, Xianxia stepped forward and introduced, Pavilion Master, this is Xianxia whom we told you about previously. He's the 2-star master teacher who broke the records of the Qianwu Kingdom Master Teacher examination, and you staked your all on recommending. Placing the book back onto the table, Pavilion Master Kang walked over and sat on the main seat before raising his head to assess Xianxia.
Yes. Su Shi and Xianxia nodded their heads.
Transcendent Mortal One Dan Pinnacle and a lack of discipline in his movements. With a look, it's clear that he has never practiced any battle techniques. This is the genius you two spoke of. Looking at Xianxia, Pavilion Master Kang frowned. Chapter 528. 3 questions in order to avoid casting doubt on the peculiarity of his heaven's path. Xianxia didn't hide his cultivation. Thus, it was easy for any cultivator to see that his current strength was only at Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Pinnacle. As a 4-star Pinnacle Master Teacher possessing a soul depth of 14.0, it was no problem for him to see through this much. On top of that, experts who had trained hard in battle techniques tended to show some traces of it in their hands, feet, and habits. Yet, the young man before him showed no traces of these traits at all. It was clear he had never practiced any battle techniques before. How could such a person be a genius? The reason why master teachers were invincible in the same class wasn't just due to their ability to seeing through the flaws of their opponents. More importantly, their grasp over their own manipulation of Xianxia and battle techniques had also reached an astounding level. How could a fellow who had never practiced a battle technique before be called a genius? It was making too light of the Master Teacher Tournament to have such a person represent the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion in it. Hearing the doubtful tone of the Pavilion Master, Su Shi hurriedly explained, Xianxia's cultivation might be low, but his comprehension in the way of Master Teachers has reached an astounding level. Comprehension. Pavilion Master Kang's complexion darkened. Elder Su, what we are choosing are talents to participate in the Master Teacher Tournament. As an elder of the Master Teacher Pavilion, you should know what kind of opponents we are facing. It was no wonder why Pavilion Master Kang was so angry. Su Shi and Xianxia had staked their all to vie for this slot, so the latter thought that Xianxia would surely be a formidable genius. Yet, the other party turned out to be only a Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Pinnacle cultivator. Furthermore, he didn't seem to have practiced any battle technique before. With this level of strength, how could he emerge victorious amidst many other 4-star master teachers? Even though strength wasn't all that was tested in the Master Teacher Tournament, it played quite a significant role. If one's cultivation realm wasn't even on par with the other party, how could one possibly offer the other party guidance? Even if one was able to do so, it would just be completely theoretical. Any pointer that wasn't proven in practice was worthless. I know, but... Su Shi panicked. No buts, take him away. Pavilion Master Kang shook his hands impatiently. Pavilion Master, don't be in such a rush to make a decision. Xianxia stepped forward and said, Xianxia's current cultivation might only be at Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Pinnacle now. But do you know what was his cultivation realm when we last saw him? When you last saw him, around 20 days ago. Pavilion Master Jiang raised his eyebrows. It was around a month ago that these two elders went to Qianwu Kingdom. Gauging by the time, considering that the trip took around 10 days, they should have met with this young man around 20 days ago. UN. Xianxia nodded. What was his cultivation realm then? Pavilion Master Kang raised his teacup and sipped on it. So what if he was able to cultivate swiftly and raised his strength form Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Intermediate stage to Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Pinnacle? There were only 2 months left until the Master Teacher Tournament. No matter how talented he was, he would only be able to reach Transcendent Mortal 2 Dan during this period of time. With such cultivation, he would still be unable to match up to the other competitors. Xianxia Realm. 20 days ago, when we first met Xianxia, he was only at Xianxia Realm. Xianxia said grimly. Pu. A mouthful of tea came spurting out of Pavilion Master Kang's mouth and nose. Widening his eyes, he uttered in disbelief, Fighter 8 Dan. Xianxia Realm. You must be joking with me. To raise one's cultivation from Xianxia Realm to Jizuan Realm, then on to half Transcension and finally Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan in 20 days. Not to mention, Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan Pinnacle. That was a total of 3 realms. Even if one were to ride on a rocket, it would be impossible to do it so quickly. In truth, he wasn't the only one in disbelief. When Ling Shu and Su Shi first noticed Zhongxian's cultivation realm, even though they didn't say anything, they also felt their hearts crumbling within. However, knowing that the other party's teacher was likely to be a master teacher ranked 6-star and above, the shock they felt alleviated by a little. Given that a high-ranked master teacher like Xianxia had traveled to a backward location like Xianxia Kingdom without informing the master teacher pavilion, he was clearly trying to conceal his identity. As a junior of the other party, without the latter's explicit permission, they didn't dare to inform others about him. Thus, even while frenziedly promoting Zhongxian, they had never divulged Xianxia's existence. As such, Pavilion Master Kang was unaware of the matter as well. That was why upon hearing that Zhongxian had grown from Xianxia realm to transcendent mortal one-dan pinnacle in less than a month, he felt as though the world had gone insane. This was no longer cultivation but infusion of cultivation. In fact, even infusion of cultivation wouldn't be so exaggerated. I can vow the authenticity of this matter. Su Shi added. To reach transcendent mortal one-dan from Xianxia realm in 20 or so days. As long as he cultivates diligently in the next 2 months, reaching transcendent mortal 2-dan pinnacle or even transcendent mortal 3-dan primary stage shouldn't be an issue. He would still be able to stand against those geniuses. Knowing that these two elders wouldn't lie, Pavilion Master Kang fell into contemplation. Most of the geniuses who traveled to the Myriad Kingdom City to participate in the Master Teacher Tournament were 4-star Master Teachers. A 1-star Master Teacher had to possess a cultivation of at least Tongxian Realm, a 2-star Master Teacher a cultivation of at least Xianxia Realm, and a 3-star Master Teacher a cultivation of at least Jizuan Realm. On the other hand, the prerequisite to becoming a 4-star Master Teacher was Transcendent Mortal 2-dan. As long as one reached Origin Energy Realm primary stage, one would have met the cultivation criterion to becoming a 4-star Master Teacher. As such, most geniuses in the tournament possessed a cultivation realm between 2-dan Origin Energy Realm and 4-dan Clarifying Turbidity Realm. Given how quickly Xianxia cultivated, it was possible that he could bring up cultivation realm up to Transcendent Mortal 3-dan primary stage within the next 2 months. With such cultivation, he would at least rank in the middle among the participants, and perhaps, he might really be able to get a good ranking down for the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Since that's the case, I'll give him a chance then. I'll raise 3 questions, and as long as he can answer them accurately, I'll allow him to participate in the selection round. As for whether he can take one of the 2 slots in the selection round, that'll depend on his performance then. After a moment of contemplation, Pavilion Master Kang raised his head and said, "All right." Hearing that Zhongxian would at least be given a chance, Su Shi and Ling Shi heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly turned to look at Zhongxian. With this look, they staggered and nearly fainted on the spot. It turned out that Xianxia wasn't even listening to their conversation. Instead, he was standing in front of the bookshelves by the wall and his finger was brushing across the books, as though he was looking for a specific book. They were so nervous over the slots that their hearts were about to beat out of their chests, and yet, this fellow didn't seem to care at all. Wasn't he way too daring? To allow you to participate in the tournament, the 2 of us even put our names on the line. Yet, you don't seem care at all. Just the thought of it left them dizzy-headed. Zhongxia. Unable to stand it any longer, Su Shi stepped forward to stop Zhongxian. The Pavilion Master has decided to give you a chance. He'll ask you 3 questions, and as long as you can answer them correctly, you'll be allowed to join the selection round. All right. Zhongxian nodded his head and walked over. Uninvolved in the conversation, Zhongxian began looking around the room while the others were discussing the matter. It was then that he noticed that there were quite a few Transcendent Mortal 2-dan books on the bookshelves by the wall. Thus, he walked over and collected them in the Library of Heaven's Path. He had collected 500 Origin Energy Realm Cultivation Technique manuals back in Honghai City, and adding the additional hundreds of books on the bookshelves here, he could already form a perfect Heaven's Path divine art. As for their conversation, he wasn't really paying attention to it. He didn't even have sufficient time to look at the books. How could he possibly have the energy to listen to the boring discussion of another? My questions will be about cultivation and guidance. As long as you can answer them correctly, I'll give you a chance to participate in the selection round. Pavilion Master Kang turned around and casually picked up the book which he was reading just before. This is a case that I have faced previously. A half-transcension cultivator was once impaled in the left lung, and as a result, the Xianxia in the left meridian was unable to flow smoothly. Under such circumstances, what kind of pointer should one offer so that the cultivator can successfully reach transcendent mortal realm? This was a case which he had dealt with personally before. It was an extremely difficult problem, and he'd had to look through innumerable books before he could find a solution for it. However, the master-teacher tournament would be a lot more difficult than this. If the other party couldn't even solve this problem, it would be futile even if the other party participated in the tournament. If that was the case, he would rather terminate the other party's candidacy right now. Since the question was concerning a half-transcension, it was within the other party's scope. Transcendent mortal realm requires one's cultivation to form a complete and whole system before one can harmonize and manipulate the environment. Given that the cultivator's left lung is pierced through and the Xianxia in his left meridian is blocked, that is equivalent to a deformity appearing on a perfect circle. It will be nigh impossible for the other party to achieve a breakthrough. Upon hearing the question, Xianxia frowned. This is truly difficult. Indeed. Even for me, I'd require at least 8 steps to solve this problem. Xianxia nodded in agreement. As 4-star master teachers, their depth and scope of knowledge were not to be underestimated. Even though this question was difficult, it was still within their capability. Just that, it would require significant effort on their part. After a moment of contemplation, Xianxia replied, I would require 7 steps. Your miniature solar art has reached the 7th circulation, so it is normal for you to require less steps than me. However, based on what I know, when the pavilion master solved the question back then, he was only a 3-star master teacher and he only used 5 steps, Xianxia said. 5 steps. Xianxia narrowed his eyes. The less steps required to solve a problem, the more efficient it was. As such, the probability of success tended to be higher. Similarly, the effectiveness would also be greater. Even given their current capability, solving the problem perfectly would require a minimum of 7 steps on their part. Yet, back when the pavilion master was only a 3-star master teacher, he only needed 5 steps. That was truly an astounding feat. I wonder how many steps Xianxia would require to solve this question. After a moment of shock, Xianxia turned to look at the young man before them. How many steps? I'm worried that he might be unable to even find a solution to it. Xianxia shook his head. Even though they were confident in Xianxia's capability, the pavilion master's question was indeed extremely difficult. Even they would require a long duration of research to solve the problem properly. It was extremely doubtful that the young man before them would be able to solve the problem. Just as the duo was worried for Xianxia, the latter, after hearing the question, frowned. What is the area of damage to the left lung? Can you give me the exact location of the impale? Also, what was the cause of the wound? Do you know the attribute of the assailant's Xianxia? The weapon used to wound that cultivator was a sword. The other party had comprehended sword intent, and a portion of the other party's sword chi had penetrated into the cultivator's bloodstream. This was the diagnosis. You can take a look at it. Knowing that Xianxia would ask this question, Pavilion Master Kang passed a book over. Xianxia casually flipped through it, and recorded in the book was the condition of the cultivator back then. The content was extremely detailed. Not only was the location of the wound recorded, even the battle technique that was used was recorded clearly. Xianxia soon finished browsing through the book. Have you found a solution yet? Pavilion Master Kang asked. Oh, that's simple. Just design a new cultivation route for the cultivator, Xianxia replied. New cultivation route? Pavilion Master Kang's complexion darkened. You mean, modifying the cultivator's cultivation technique? That's right. Since the wound in the left lung creates a gap in the flow of Xianxia, all that has to be done is to change the route for the flow of Xianxia. With that, the cultivator's cultivation should form a whole once more, and achieving a breakthrough wouldn't be a problem, Xianxia said. Modifying the cultivation technique. Xianxia and Xianxia were taken aback. That would save the hassle of healing the wound, reconnecting the meridians, conditioning the body, and many other steps. In total, it would only require a single step. Chapter 529. What are you standing there for?
Go and pour me a cup of water. Xianxia's treatment required 8 steps, Suxia's required 7 steps, and even Pavilion Master Kang's would require 5 steps. Yet, this fellow actually solved the problem using a single step? Nonsense. You are dreaming. At that moment, Pavilion Master Kang harumphed coldly. His face was steeled, and the displeasure on it was clear. Every single cultivation technique that is passed down is created, tested, and refined by innumerable predecessors. How can it be changed that easily? If that cultivator were to try an untested cultivation technique in a wounded state, putting aside whether it would be possible to reach transcendent mortal realm or not, their cultivation might even go berserk, thus exacerbating their wounds and putting them at risk of death. As a master teacher, how can you come up with such a flippant solution? After hearing the words of the 2 elders, his expectations of the young man had been lifted. Yet, he didn't expect the other party to answer his questions so frivolously. If a cultivation technique could be modified that easily, then what was the value of a secret art? Not to mention, there was a foreign Xianxia existent in the other party's body. Without neutralizing it, recovering from one's injuries, and conditioning one's physical body, how could one attempt for a higher cultivation realm? In the end, the other party failed to live up to his name. If they were to do so, not only would they fail to save the cultivator would even die because of them. The dignity of the Master-Teacher Pavilion would vanish in an instant. Berserk. You are overthinking it. Waving his hands to interrupt the other party's reprimanding, Xianxia looked at Pavilion Master Kang impassively. You'll know whether it is effective or not once I tell you the new route for the Xianxia circulation. Upon leaving the Dantian, the cultivator's Xianxia will flow through the Tai, Guanmen, Liangmen, and finally, it'll gather at Xixia. After 3 circulations, one should be able to try for transcendent mortal realm, and there'll be a 90% chance of success. Possessing the Heaven's Path divine art, Xianxia grasped the very essence of cultivation itself. While modifying a cultivation technique, just like the other party said, was difficult, to him, it wasn't an issue at all. By slightly modifying the Xianxia route to circumvent the injured portion and mediating the foreign Xianxia in the cultivator's body, reaching transcendent mortal realm wouldn't be a problem. Flow through Tai, Guanmen, and Liangmen. The trio frowned. This Xianxia route was completely unheard of in normal cultivation techniques. Even as 4-star master teachers, they weren't able to deduce its feasibility in an instant. Every single cultivation technique needed to be tried in action before a conclusion could be made about it. Even master teachers were unable to determine something was feasible or not immediately just by listening to it once. You're saying that as long as the cultivator cultivates using this method, she'll be able to achieve a breakthrough immediately. Pavilion Master Kang's complexion turned even more awful. It was extremely difficult for even an ordinary cultivator to achieve a breakthrough. To have a severely injured cultivator achieve a breakthrough just by circulating one's Xianxia in the given pathway thrice. You must be joking. That's right. Xianxia replied nonchalantly, I've taken a look at the information given, and the cultivator is wounded by searing sword qi. This sword qi carries an exceptionally sharp edge, and after seeping into the cultivator's body through the wound in her left chest, it was traveling toward her dantian. The cultivation technique the cultivator cultivated was the great ancient incursion art. The technique focused heavily on sharpness and burst. Continuous usage of this technique results in the weakening of one's Xianxia, and 3 consecutive usages will deplete one's Xianxia. This is of similar nature to the searing sword qi in the sense that they are both extremely violent energy that will destroy all that stand their path. When the 2 Xianxia collides with one another, it becomes a case where the stronger energy triumphs. Under normal circumstances, as the cultivator will be able to send in a steady supply of Xianxia to deal with the searing sword qi, it shouldn't pose a problem at all. However, it's a pity that this cultivator's meridians were simply too thin. A violent collision can easily tear them apart, thus crippling her cultivation. Thus, unable to send in a surge of Xianxia to overwhelm the searing sword qi in a single go, a standstill occurred instead. Not only would the searing sword qi be unable to be cleared, the injury would even worsen over time. At this point, Xianxia suddenly stopped. With eyes as sharp as lightning, he said, If I'm not mistaken, when these symptoms were recorded, it was the 7th day after the cultivator was injured. This. Pavilion Master Kang was taken aback. You're right. He had dealt with that cultivator's problem personally, and it had always been something he was proud of. Thus, he remembered the details of the incident clearly, and it was indeed the 7th day that the details of the other party's condition were detailed on that book. Just that, the book only recorded the location of the injury and the battle technique that was used to injure the cultivator. The duration of the injury wasn't written. Could it be that the young man before him actually deduced the timing based on the content recorded? On the 7th day, unable to control the clash of Xianxia in her body, the injury on her left chest was unable to heal and it had even started to rot. Under that situation, given that 2 violent surges of Xianxia were clashing with one another, forcefully driving her cultivation technique would only exacerbate the collision and aggravate her injuries. Xianxia chuckled lightly. Under normal circumstances, one should first expend all of their Xianxia first. This is equivalent to drawing away the troops away from the point of collision so that the sword qi is able to flow out from the narrow meridian. Only after that should one find some way to neutralize it. That's right. Su Fan and Ling Yuheng nodded their heads in agreement. The 8 and 7-step methods that spoke of respectively consisted of the same procedures as well. In order to achieve a breakthrough, the cultivator must recover from her injuries first. And to recover from her injuries, one must first solve the issue causing it. And the sword qi was the main problem at hand. Expending one's own Xianxia was a means of retreat. Only then would the ferocious sword qi lower its guard and come out from the narrow meridian. Once that happened, there would be at least a dozen ways for one to neutralize the sword qi. Pavilion Master Kang nodded his head as well. He also solved it in that way back then as well. In fact, he felt that all master teachers would choose the same method when faced with that problem. Was this incorrect? Right? Not only is that wrong, it's a grave mistake. Xianxia shook his head. Removing one's Xianxia is just like moving away a boulder blocking the flow of a stream. While it does allow the sword qi to flow out, you must remember that it is an incomparably sharp searing sword qi. Furthermore, the location of the wound was near the left lung. That location is extremely close to the heart. If the sword qi gushed out and impaled the heart, the cultivator would die on the spot. Su Fan was taken aback. But given that the sword qi was trapped for 7 days straight, its sharp edge should have already dulled. You're right in saying that it would have become dull. The probability of impaling the heart is probably less than 1/100th. However, what if it didn't follow the usual path of heading toward the Zhuofei meridian via the Huikai acupoint? What if it headed to the Xianxia meridian instead? This. Su Shu and Ling Shi jolted in shock. Huikai acupoint was the point where the Zhuofei meridian and Xianxia meridian intersected. The former led to the lung whereas the latter led to the heart. Even though the sword qi would usually flow down toward the dantian, there was no guarantee that the cultivator, out of worry, would leave a surge of Xianxia within her body. If so, there was a high possibility that the sword qi may proceed upward and enter the Xianxia meridian instead, thus impaling her heart. If that was the case, even the deities would be unable to save her. Pavilion Master Kang's face paled, and his body tightened. When he first stumbled by the case, all he thought about was how he could cure the cultivator. He didn't think too much about the consequences, and it was only very long later that he realized the presence of this problem. Even though the probability wasn't high, it was still an existent possibility. It was fortunate that he was lucky then. Otherwise, the cultivator would have been dead by now. If so, not only would he be unable to become a 4-star master teacher and the pavilion master, he might have even been stripped of his master teacher license and cursed at for innumerable years to come. However, he had only noticed this problem after reaching 4-star pinnacle, when he looked back at this case. Yet, this young man, with a single glance, actually thought of this possibility. Could the idea of modifying the cultivation technique really be feasible? Earlier, he thought that the other party was spouting nonsense. But given how the other party was able to consider even this situation, the issue regarding the cultivation technique probably wasn't as easy as he thought. My idea doesn't require the cultivator to expend her Xianxia clean beforehand, and neither does the sword qi have to be lured out of the meridian. Ignoring the shocked expressions of the trio, Xianxia continued,
Tai acupoint is the first point of divergence between the left and right meridians. By having Xianxia flow through here, an energy harmonization could be achieved, thus pulling that sword qi down here. As long as the sword qi traveled down here, the rest would be easy. The Tai acupoint is close to the dantian, so the cultivator can easily sustain the Xianxia to this area to force the sword qi out of one's body. Widening his eyes, Xianxia muttered to himself, if one views the body as a formation, Tai is where the life gate is located. When the two Xianxia collides here, the sword qi will very naturally gush out from the acupoint. According to the theory of a formation master, the human body could be viewed as a formation as well. It possessed the origin gate, hibernation gate, life gate, impair gate, panorama gate, death gate, closed gate, and fright gate. The 8 gates. Tai acupoint was the point of connection between the left and right meridian, as well as the location where the life gate of a human's body was located. If one were to gather the sword qi here, it would be easy to drive it out from one's body. Just like that, without wasting a single ounce of energy, one would be able to subdue the sword qi. It was dozens of times better than the expending of one's Xianxia to forcefully neutralize the sword qi. Wait. If the sword qi were to travel here, it would indeed be easy to deal with it. However, what if it didn't? Pavilion Master Kang frowned. The sword qi had been colliding with the cultivator's Xianxia for 7 days for now. Without withdrawing one's Xianxia, why would the sword qi charge into the Tai acupoint? It was just like having an enemy guarding at the doorway. As long as the enemy didn't retreat, there would be no reason for one to charge forward and put oneself in a position of danger. Sigh. Hearing the other party's question, Xianxia sighed deeply and shook his head helplessly. It seems like you have a limited knowledge on the cultivator's great ancient incursion art. Aye. Pavilion Master Kang's face reddened. The great ancient incursion art was a unique and peculiar cultivation technique. Even though Pavilion Master Kang had heard of it, he had never tried cultivating it, and as such, his knowledge of it was limited. The essence of the great ancient incursion art lies in sharpness and burst. Continuous usage of this technique will result in the weakening of one's Xianxia, and 3 consecutive usages will deplete one's Xianxia. Just like I've said before, allow the Xianxia to circulate via the new pathway for 3 times. This way, when the sharpness of the Xianxia disappeared, the sword qi will see it as an opportunity to charge out and wreck one's dantian. And to arrive at one's dantian, one had to travel past the Tai acupoint. Surely, you should have at least thought of this, Xianxia replied calmly. This. Pavilion Master Kang's body jolted. After being jammed for 7 days, even though the sword qi possessed no sentience, it would still charge forward as though a spring which had been suppressed with all of its might for the last few days. It wasn't easy for the great ancient incursion art to become so weak. This was the ideal opportunity to launch an offense, and there was no way for the sword qi to overlook it. As long as they put some thought into it, all cultivators should be able to think of this. But your steps are incomplete. You said that circulating one's Xianxia 3 times will allow one to attempt a breakthrough to transcendent mortal realm. However, up until now, the sword qi has only been removed. Recovering from his shock, Pavilion Master Kang continued asking slightly doubtfully. The sword qi has only been removed? Think deeper into it, the Xianxia circulation method I just told you about. Xianxia chuckled. Upon leaving the dantian, the cultivator's Xianxia will flow through the Tai, Guanmen, Liangmen, and finally, it'll gather at Xixia. Pavilion Master Kang recalled and recited the content which the young man spoke of previously, and his face suddenly warped. As the cultivator's Xianxia declines and the sword qi pursuits, the duo would reunite once more at Tai. After clashing with one another, the sword qi would burst forth from the acupoint while the cultivator's Xianxia would make use of the momentum from the clash to break open the Guanmen and Liangmen, and finally reach transcendent mortal realm. That's equivalent to using the violent might of the sword qi to overcome one's bottleneck. The possibility of success is, indeed, no lower than 90%. Xianxia felt his throat running dry. As a 4-star master teacher, he had fully grasped the outcomes that would occur from the different flow of Xianxia within one's body. Even though the sword qi would be expelled from the life gate when clashing with the cultivator's Xianxia at Tai, the violent energy within it would meld into her Xianxia. Since the enemy who dealt the sword chi to the cultivator was able to hurt her, it could only mean that the person was stronger than her. Going by such, the enemy must be at least a transcendent mortal. The violent energy of a transcendent mortal paired with the cultivator's own strength. When the two overlaps with one another, breaking one's bottleneck would become much easier. In fact, 90% seemed to be an underestimation. If that cultivator had done that back then, the success rate would probably be 100%. Why you? Upon thinking of this, everyone widened their eyes in shock. When they heard of the symptom of the cultivator, what immediately ran through their head was how they could neutralize the Xianxia, condition the cultivator's physical body, and find a way to help her reach transcendent mortal realm. Yet, the young man before them actually thought of harnessing the sword chi trapped within the other party's body to create a whole new cultivation technique that could help the cultivator achieve a breakthrough. More importantly, from the point he finished reading the case to his recitation of the solution, only 10 breaths had passed. How in the world did he manage to do it? Was he still a human? Seeing that the other party has already understood the logic behind his solution, Xianxia asked nonchalantly, "So, can this cultivation technique of mine cure the cultivator and help her achieve a breakthrough?"
Yes, it can.
Pavilion Master Kang's face paled. Steadying his breath, he slowly nodded his head. It had taken him only 5 steps and he had prided himself on it. Yet, the person before him only used a single step. It seemed like Xianxia and Xianxia were right. Even though the person before them was slightly lacking in his cultivation, he was anything but ordinary.
Then have I answered your question yet?
Xianxia continued asking.
Yes.
Pavilion Master Kang nodded his head. Since I'm right, what are you standing there for? With a slightly displeased tone, the young man before him said, "Can't you see that I'm thirsty after talking so much? Go and pour me a cup of water." Chapter 530. He is a celestial master teacher Putong. Pour him a cup of water. He's actually trying to get the pavilion master to pour him a cup of water. Hearing those words, Su Fan and Ling Yuheng's mouths twitched violently. In that instant, the two transcendent mortal 4-dan experts nearly fell to the ground together. When they first entered, they told Xianxia clearly that the pavilion master was an austere person, and he had to take note of what he said. Who knew that this fool would actually order him around as though trying to teach a servant a lesson?
The heck? Are you insane?
The both of us had to plead so hard with him for your slot. Do you think that it has been easy for us? Yet, you seem to be trying your best to dump this slot away from you. Just as tears were trailing down the faces of the duo as they anticipated the wrath of the pavilion master, the usually austere pavilion master suddenly stood up and respectfully replied, "Yes." Turning around, he began heating up a pot of water. After which, he took out his most prized tea leaves, filled the cup with it, before passing it over to Xianxia.
The heck? What is going on?
The two 4-star master teachers, transcendent mortal 4-dan elders, stared at one another in astonishment, frenzied by the sight before them. Pavilion Master Kang was known in the Myriad Kingdom City for his austerity. Even Alliance head Zhao wouldn't have the privilege of being served tea by him, and yet, despite Xianxia speaking to him so impolitely, he still obeyed the other party's command respectfully.
What in the world happened?
Suddenly, Xianxia thought of something and his body trembled violently.
It's
impartation of heaven's will. The main reason why lower-ranked master teachers didn't dare to disobey the words of higher-ranked master teachers was because of this. The words of Xianxia a moment ago seemed to harness the voice of the heavens, the energy of the soul. Because it wasn't directed at them and they were busy analyzing the case as well, they didn't notice it. But thinking back, that was indeed it. To actually use impartation of heavens will against Pavilion Master Kang, and to succeed at that. What the heck? Xianxia and Xianxia stared at one another, and at this moment, they even felt like dying already. Pavilion Master Kang was an existence whose soul depth had reached at least 14.0. For the number 1 master teacher in Myriad Kingdom City to fall for impartation of heaven's will, and on top of that, for the one who did so to be a 2-star master teacher who wasn't even 20 yet. If word were to spread out, many people would surely die from shock. While the duo was in shock, Pavilion Master Kang also recovered from his trance and his eyes slowly widened. His cheeks twitched violently, and he nearly spurted a mouthful of blood. To think that the strongest master teacher of the Master Teacher Pavilion would actually be beguiled by the impartation of heaven's will of a 2-star master teacher, and willingly serve the latter tea. Just the thought of it left him in frenzy. Just as he was considering what he should do next, the young man before him sipped on the tea served to him and looked at him nonchalantly. "All right, let's move on to the second question." Second question. Pavilion Master Kang's eyelids twitched. The first question had already made him prey to the other party's impartation of heaven's will. If he were to ask another question, would he be put under the same condition again? With a righteous expression, Pavilion Master Kang grandly declared, "There's no need for it. The 3 questions are to test whether you have the qualifications to attend the selection round. Given how your answer for the first question was much more logical than our answers, that proves testimony to your capability. There's no need for the next 2 questions." The main point of the 3 questions was to test the other party's capability as a master teacher. Given how the other party used a single move to solve a question that would require 5 moves from his part, not to mention how he fell prey to the other party's impartation of heaven's will, just this in itself made him qualified to attend the selection round. Since that was the case, it was meaningless to proceed on with the other questions. If so, he might as well be magnanimous and allow the other party to pass straight. Otherwise, if he were to be beguiled again, that would truly be embarrassing. Waving his hands grandly, Pavilion Master Kang turned around and said, "Elder Ling, go and sound the assembly bell. Have everyone gather at the Master Teacher Hall now. We'll conduct the selection round." "Yes." Nodding his head, Elder Ling retreated from the room. A moment later, a bell chimed loudly in the Master Teacher Pavilion. As long as one was a Master Teacher of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, one had to gather immediately upon hearing the sound. "Bring Xianxia to the Master Teacher Hall. Su Shi and I will be going over later." Hearing the chime, Pavilion Master Kang knew that the Master Teacher Hall would be crowded very soon. Thus, he decided to instruct an apprentice outside to Xianxia over first. Upon hearing the instruction, the young man guarding outside came in, bowed respectfully to Xianxia, and led the way. Knowing that he was heading over to the Master Teacher Hall for the selection round, Xianxia followed the young man without any complaints. As the duo left the room abruptly fell silent. Pavilion Master Kang stared at Elder Su Fan, whom he had been a close friend with for several decades, hesitated for a moment, before asking, "Regarding Xianxia, do you have anything to say?" "He is a 2-star master teacher from Qianwu Kingdom. He isn't 20 yet," Su Shi said. "That's not what I'm asking." Pavilion Master Kang's complexion darkened. "I want detailed information. I want to know the reason why you two are so determined to recommend him." "What the heck? You two are elders of the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion. Given that person's humble background, how could you have recommended him instead of your own students? After all, Su Shi had a student who had reached 3-star pinnacle as well, and his capability was in no way inferior to Fu Xiaochen. This." Su Shi hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Shall we head to the Chamber of Confidence?" The Chamber of Confidence was a unique room where secrets were discussed. No matter how powerful one was, it would be impossible for one to eavesdrop on the content discussed from the outside. Thus, there was no need to worry about a single word being leaked out from within. "All right." With a grim expression, Pavilion Master Kang stood up. As the head of the Master Teacher Pavilion, he had to come into contact with innumerable secrets. As such, there was a chamber of confidence within his room as well. Pushing open the door and walking in, he activated the formation and the duo immediately fell into an absolutely silent atmosphere. After seating down, Pavilion Master Kang urged, "You may speak now." Given how grim Elder Su's expression was, the matter he had to talk about must be of grave importance. Thus, he calmed himself down and prepared himself mentally. 20 days ago, a rejection of the ancestors, sorrowful chimes of the bell happened in our Master Teacher Pavilion. Does Pavilion Master still remember the incident? Given how huge the matter is, how could I forget about it? I've already informed all lower Master Teacher Pavilion to look into the matter. Just that, there have been no results at all. I can't help but suspect whether it might be triggered by the master teachers from the other empires participating in the master teacher tournament.
Pavilion Master Kang nodded.
Back when they were in the midst of conducting a conference, the teacher acknowledgement hall suddenly started trembling non-stop. Even though he had suppressed the news, as someone who had witnessed the massive uproar then, how could he possibly not remember the incident? You sent a message to Qianwu Kingdom saying that, if either Kongshi's statue had shaken or the teacher acknowledgement hall had collapsed, report to the Mirade Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Pavilion immediately.
Xianxia continued. UN.
Rejection of the ancestors. Sorrowful chimes of the bell. The most direct manifestation of this situation is the trembling of Kongshi's statue and the collapse of the teacher acknowledgement hall. If it happened in the region, one can confirm that the exact location of the genius was there then. Answering the question, Pavilion Master Kang suddenly froze and his breathing hastened. 20 days ago, you were in Qianwu Kingdom. Could it be that the teacher acknowledgement hall there collapsed?
That's right.
However, due to the possible consequences of the matter, for fear of the news leaking out, I asked them to reply with a no for the time being.
Xianxia clasped his fist.
I seek your pardon for that. Back then, Xianxia had instructed the Qianwu Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion to reply with a negative then. Otherwise, if the matter were to blow up, Xianxia would be in dire danger. If the news were to leak, the master teacher responsible for the incident might be in trouble.
You made the right call.
Pavilion Master Kang nodded his head. If he were put in the other party's position, he would have surely done the same as well. After all, as senior master teachers, they had a duty to protect their talented juniors. When the Qianwu Kingdom's teacher acknowledgement hall collapsed, Xianxia was in the midst of taking the 2-star master teacher examination.
Xianxia said,
You're saying that he is likely to be the genius who rejected the acknowledgement of the predecessors and triggered the sorrowful chimes of the bell.
Pavilion Master Kang narrowed his eyes.
At this moment, he finally understood why the duo had recommended Xianxia so strongly, even putting their everything on the line. To be able to win the acknowledgement of so many predecessors. How talented must he be? Not only so, if I'm not mistaken, Xianxia is very likely to be a celestial master teacher.
Xianxia said.
In truth, he should have reported this matter to the Pavilion Master as soon as he returned. The reason why he and Xianxia chose to continue to keep it to themselves wasn't because they were intentionally hiding the matter but that they couldn't confirm it at all. Thus, they had been spending their time flipping through the books to ascertain the facts. However, it was a pity that there had only been one celestial master teacher in history, and that was Kongshi. Without sufficient information, they couldn't confirm their deductions. Even after spending almost a dozen days buried in books, he and Elder Ling were still completely bewildered.
What did you say?
Pavilion Master Kang narrowed his eyes. Back when Xianxia took the master teacher examination, not only did the teacher acknowledgement hall collapse, Kongshi's statue broke as well. Other than the acknowledgement of a celestial master teacher, the student of a sage, I can't really think of any other possibility.
Xianxia explained the happenings he had seen in Qianwu Kingdom.
This. Upon hearing of the phenomena that had occurred in Qianwu Kingdom Master Teacher Pavilion, Pavilion Master Kang's lips turned dry. Even though he couldn't confirm anything at this point, there was a good chance that Xianxia, the culprit of all of these bizarre happenings, is a celestial master teacher. Suddenly, he recalled another incident. 10 days ago, another acknowledgement of celestial master teacher occurred. Could it be him as well? Several days ago, the phenomenon of trembling of myriad tokens, harmony of the chimes occurred in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master Teacher Alliance, and based on the ancient records, this was a sign of the acknowledgement of celestial master teacher. But it was a pity that despite all the effort he had devoted into investigating the matter, there wasn't the slightest news on the matter. Since Xianxia was likely to be a celestial master teacher, could it be him this time as well? That I'm not too sure, but judging from the timing, I doubt that he was at the capital then.
Xianxia shook his head.
Since Xianxia wasn't at the capital then, it would make it even harder to verify the matter. Regardless of whether it is true or not, given that is likely to be a celestial master teacher, there shouldn't be a problem in him participating in the tournament. It's just that it's a pity that. After a moment of hesitation, Pavilion Master Kang shook his head. He's still too young, and his cultivation is too weak. He might not be able to match up to the others. Even though the other party was a celestial master teacher, an impressive figure recognized by even the heavens, he was still much too young. Those who could participate in the tournament were all nearing their 30s. With 10 years of difference, no matter how talented Xianxia was, it would still be difficult for him to match up to the others. Forget it. Let's not think about this matter anymore. In any case, you did well in this matter. Make sure to keep this a secret. Don't let anyone find out about it. Shaking his head, Pavilion Master Kang decided to shove it aside for the moment. All of the master teachers should be in place already. Let's head over to the Master Teacher Hall as well.
UN.
Xianxia stood up, but after taking 2 steps, he realized that the Pavilion Master was still stationary behind. Turning around, he saw the latter looking at him with an embarrassed expression. Regarding the issue of me being beguiled earlier, I hope that you can keep it a secret.
Xianxia.
Thank you for listening to PandaAudioBooks. If you love what you hear and want to support my work, check out the PayPal link in the description. Every bit helps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit that notifications bell to stay updated with all our latest audiobook chapters. We'll see you in the next one.